𝗀𝐮𝐬𝐿9. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by BannTheMann on Wattpad. Now let's start. Chapter name: Izuku Midoriya, Origin. 7 years earlier, chapter begins. Izuku Midoriya was born on July 15th. On July 15th, 1997, a doctor delivered news that would change his life forever. He informed Inko, Izuku's mother, that her son was quirkless. The young Midoriya sat in shock, his dreams crumbling around him. Inko, desperate to defend her son, argued that all of Izuku's friends had shown signs of quirks. The doctor asked about their quirks, and Inko explained that she could levitate small objects while his father could breathe fire. The doctor noted that by this age, Izuku should have developed a quirk, possibly a combination of his parents' abilities. However, further research indicated that toe joints were related to quirk development, and unfortunately, Izuku was part of the small percentage of people who possess 2 joints, meaning he was quirkless. The doctor's words left Izuku stunned. The journey home was silent. Inko felt a heavy weight of guilt, believing she was to blame for her son's diagnosis. When they arrived, Izuku rushed to his room and shut the door. Inko steeled herself and entered his dark room, the only light coming from the monitor and the door she had just opened. She found Izuku watching a video of All Might rescuing civilians. Upon noticing his mother, tears streamed down his cheeks. He expressed his admiration for superheroes, saying he wanted to be like them. Inko, overwhelmed with emotion, hugged her son tightly, apologizing repeatedly and blaming herself for his situation. On May 2, 2003, a now 9-year-old Izuku fidgeted with his shirt, uncertain about visiting the Bakugo household. Years had passed since his diagnosis, and life had been challenging. Inko had witnessed her son return home with bruises and bandages, which terrified her. Despite Izuku's reassurances that he was fine, Inko knew better, leading to numerous meetings with teachers about the bullying he faced at school. While the bullying had lessened, it still persisted, with former friends stealing from him and calling him names like Deku, which meant useless. Inko reassured Izuku as they approached the Bakugo home, reminding him that she and Mitsuki had been friends since childhood. They walked through the gates and knocked on the door, which opened to reveal Mitsuki, who greeted Inko with a warm hug. Inko apologized for their lack of communication, but Mitsuki brushed it off, understanding the challenges Inko faced as a single mother since Hisashi had left for the States. Noticing Izuku hiding behind his mother's legs, Mitsuki knelt down to his level, excitedly recognizing him as the boy she had seen grow. Izuku, unsure of what to call her, was encouraged to call her Aunt Mitsuki. As he grew more comfortable, Mitsuki invited them inside, promising to prepare something to eat and introducing them to someone special. She returned with a small boy who had the same blonde hair and red eyes as his mother. Mitsuki introduced him as Katsuki, her 3-year-old son. Izuku approached the small boy, unsure of what to say, and Katsuki responded with a challenging glare, asking who Izuku was. Mitsuki reprimanded her son, questioning where he had learned such language. Inko whispered to Izuku, suggesting he had definitely picked it up from his mother, recalling their younger days when she had been called out by teachers for even worse language. Izuku introduced himself, extending his hand and saying it was nice to meet Katsuki, who responded with his own tiny hand, shaking Izuku's larger one. The two mothers smiled at their children, and Mitsuki allowed Katsuki to join Izuku in play. In April 2007, All Might faced off against the villain known as 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. He proclaimed that today was the day justice would be served. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, filled with rage, declared his intent to rid the world of All Might and lunged forward, swinging his chainsaw in an attempt to strike the #1 hero. However, All Might, with his incredible speed, dodged the attack effortlessly. Frustrated, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 shouted for All Might to stand still. A crowd of civilians watched the battle unfold, including a 14-year-old Izuku Midoriya, who stood in awe of the intense fight before him. All Might counterattacked with a powerful punch, sending 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 crashing into a building, much to the crowd's excitement. Declaring it was over, All Might demanded the villain to surrender. Izuku cheered louder than anyone else, which only served to irritate 𝐻𝐼𝐶 further. In a fit of anger, the villain vowed to ruin All Might's reputation instead. Suddenly, 𝐻𝐼𝐶 charged toward the audience, chainsaw in hand, aiming for the most annoying target, Izuku. All Might, horrified, raced to intervene. In a shocking moment, Izuku closed his eyes, only to open them and witness All Might taking the hit for him, the chainsaw embedded in his shoulder. Izuku gasped, tears welling in his eyes, as All Might reassured him that he had the situation under control. 𝐻𝐼𝐶 laughed, taunting All Might about his selflessness leading to defeat, and hurled him into a building. As 𝐻𝐼𝐶 approached the fallen hero, he was suddenly struck in the back of the head by a book. The villain turned to see Izuku, who had climbed over the fence separating the civilians from the battle, brandishing a metal pipe he had found among the debris. Stuttering, Izuku demanded that the villain leave All Might alone. 𝐻𝐼𝐶 mocked him, suggesting he run home and tell everyone about the villain who defeated All Might. At that moment, All Might loomed over 𝐻𝐼𝐶, ready to deliver a lesson in justice. With a mighty shout, he unleashed a powerful punch that sent the villain crashing into a massive crater, leaving the crowd cheering for their hero. However, Izuku found himself scolded by both heroes and civilians for his reckless actions. 30 minutes later, Izuku walked home, still feeling the weight of the reprimands. Suddenly, All Might appeared from the sky, announcing his arrival with enthusiasm. Shocked, Izuku could hardly believe it. All Might, now bandaged from his earlier injury, reassured Izuku that he was fine. Izuku apologized, feeling responsible for the chaos that had led to All Might's injury. All Might, however, dismissed his concerns, stating he was not there to scold him but had something important to discuss. Izuku was taken aback when All Might expressed admiration for his bravery in rushing to help, something the surrounding heroes had hesitated to do. He proclaimed that he wanted Izuku to be his successor. Stunned, Izuku struggled to process the information, thoughts racing through his mind about becoming like All Might. All Might snapped his fingers to bring Izuku back to reality, prompting him to introduce himself. After a moment of contemplation, Izuku accepted the offer, declaring his willingness to become All Might's successor. All Might, thrilled, acknowledged the decision and mentioned they had work to do, though he realized he didn't even know Izuku's name yet. Izuku introduced himself, stating he was Izuku Midoriya. Chapter name, Teaching at 𝐴. Chapter begins. It was another bright blue day in the city of Mizutofu, with rush hour causing thousands of people to fill the busy streets and traffic at its peak. A monstrous roar echoed through the city as a giant creature rampaged, drawing the attention of civilians who watched in awe. Pro-Hero 𝐀𝐮𝐿 rushed to the scene, frustrated by the chaos. He launched tree branches at the villain, who swatted them aside in its fury. From a distance, a young hero marveled at the size of the creature, contemplating whether he should intervene. He decided to let someone else take the spotlight. Meanwhile, Pro-Hero Deku worked to ensure the safety of the civilians. Suddenly, 𝐀𝐮𝐿 burst onto the scene, kicking the monster away, leaving everyone stunned by her impressive entrance. However, as she landed, she began to shrink. With a bright smile, she introduced herself, declaring it was her debut as a hero. The crowd erupted in excitement, pulling out cameras to capture the moment. She nervously apologized for any collateral damage caused. 𝐀𝐮𝐿 reassured her that someone had managed to prevent the villain from crashing down. Beneath the building, a tall man with a quirk that generated green electricity effortlessly lifted the villain and tossed it onto the road, ensuring no one was harmed. This man was Izuku Midoriya, known as Deku, the number 3 hero. He wiped sweat from his forehead, chuckling and waving at 𝐀𝐮𝐿. She rushed over, playfully scolding him for overshadowing her debut. Midoriya and Takayama had a long history, having been classmates at 𝐴. They had shared a friendship that some of their classmates had playfully suggested could be more, but nothing had come of it. Midoriya encouraged her, expressing how impressive she had been and predicting her rise in the hero ranks. He often admired his colleagues' quirks and collected hero merchandise, though he avoided the more suggestive items. As thoughts of a past date with Midnight crossed his mind, he quickly shook them off. Suddenly, Midoriya received a notification on his watch, realizing he needed to leave. He waved goodbye to Takayama as he took off into the sky. She watched him go, feeling a mix of irritation and admiration. Midoriya soared through the air, enjoying the breeze until he reached a familiar rooftop. There stood his mentor, friend, and the #1 hero, All Might. They exchanged greetings, and Midoriya expressed how nice it was to catch up. All Might shared that he would be returning to teach at 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴, surprising Midoriya, who thought he had retired after their battle with All for One. All Might explained that while the battle had taken a toll on him, he was back and ready to teach. Midoriya expressed his disbelief, knowing how much All Might had sacrificed. All Might reassured him that despite his age and the challenges he faced, he still had much to offer. Midoriya felt a sense of gratitude, knowing he could never replace All Might's presence. All Might encouraged him to be more confident, reminding him of his own growth and the hope he inspired in others. Then, All Might revealed that you needed a homeroom teacher for the new Class 1. Midoriya was taken aback, unsure if he was ready for such a responsibility. All Might urged him to consider it, suggesting that if he could face villains, he could certainly handle a classroom of students. After some back and forth, Midoriya reluctantly agreed to give it a try, realizing he had little choice. He yawned, feeling the end of his shift approaching. As he prepared to leave, he received a text from Aunt Mitsuki, asking him to stop by. Midoriya sighed, knowing that his little brother needed some guidance. He wondered how he would manage in a teaching environment. Will it be better than he expected, or would it dissolve into complete chaos as he pleaded to Aizawa on his doorstep? A minor detail to note is that All Might is not injured in this version of events. Midoriya and All Might fought All for One together, allowing All Might to sustain less damage. However, this does not mean he is in his prime, as he is getting older and One for All is slowly fading from him. Midoriya flew towards a place he was all too familiar with, the Bakugo residence. He descended near the front entrance and pressed the doorbell. After a brief wait, he heard loud mumbles from inside before the door swung open. Mitsuki greeted him with a smile, expressing her gratitude for his visit. Midoriya returned the smile and stepped inside, curious about the reason for his visit. Mitsuki explained that she had been receiving reports from Aldra regarding Katsuki's behavior and inappropriate language towards other students. Midoriya pondered the situation, recalling that this had been an ongoing issue for years. Mitsuki mentioned that the teachers were concerned, particularly after Katsuki had told some students to jump off a roof. Midoriya felt a mix of shock and determination, realizing he needed to talk to Katsuki. As he made his way upstairs, he heard a scream echoing from Katsuki's room. He chuckled, recognizing that it must be his little brother. Upon reaching the door, he noticed it was decorated with edgy signs. He knocked gently, but Katsuki's voice came through, demanding he leave. Midoriya opened the door to find Katsuki on his bed, reading a comic, and he frowned at the sight of the #3 hero. Katsuki rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed by Midoriya's presence. Midoriya casually asked how school was going, but Katsuki dismissed him, raising the comic to cover his face. Midoriya playfully reminded him that he was his big brother and wanted to know what he was up to. Katsuki's grip on the comic tightened, and he yelled, embarrassed by the reminder of their relationship. Midoriya reminisced about the time Katsuki bragged to his friends about being the brother of the Izuku Midoriya, which only made Katsuki angrier. He insisted that he was doing fine in school, mentioning that they were discussing their future paths. However, he expressed disdain for his classmates, believing none of them would become heroes. Midoriya encouraged Katsuki to consider the potential of others, but Katsuki remained dismissive, claiming they were just extras. The conversation shifted as Midoriya mentioned Katsuki's application to you. Katsuki confidently declared his intention to surpass everyone and become the strongest hero, even better than Midoriya and All Might. Midoriya admired his confidence, but Katsuki misinterpreted his laughter as mockery. Midoriya proposed they train together, which surprised Katsuki but quickly turned into a mischievous grin. He eagerly accepted, excited at the prospect of a challenge. Midoriya suggested they find a place to train without holding back, and before Katsuki could ask where they were going, they suddenly found themselves in a forest. Midoriya casually mentioned their new location, while Katsuki was in disbelief at the rapid change of scenery. Midoriya reminded him of his speed, playfully referencing his nickname, the Green Flash. With a grin, he declared it was time to get back to training. As they began, Katsuki charged forward, ready to unleash his explosive attacks. Midoriya stood still, confident in his ability to evade. When Katsuki launched an explosion, Midoriya effortlessly stopped it with a single finger, leaving Katsuki in shock. Midoriya commented on Katsuki's strength, which only fueled Katsuki's anger. Katsuki launched a series of attacks, but Midoriya easily dodged them, offering tips on his fighting style. Suddenly, Midoriya vanished from Katsuki's sight, causing him to panic. Just then, he felt the ground rumble beneath him as he was pulled underground, leaving only his head visible. Midoriya appeared in front of him with a watering can, teasingly suggesting he was growing a 𝐻𝗂𝐻𝗂 in his garden. Katsuki yelled in frustration, demanding to know if this was a joke. Midoriya explained that it was. Also a lesson about how he treated others, emphasizing the harm in his words. As Katsuki protested, Midoriya splashed him with water, insisting he needed to understand the impact of his actions. Words could hurt more than any punch Midoriya could throw. He explained this to 𝐻𝗂𝐻𝗂 while gently patting his hair, encouraging him to stop using hurtful words. Midoriya reassured him with a smirk, reminding him that such language was not befitting a future hero. 𝐻𝗂𝐻𝗂, surprised that Midoriya understood, guessed that his mother had shared their conversation. With a sigh, he conceded, admitting defeat in his attempt to be nicer at school. Suddenly, Midoriya pulled 𝐻𝗂𝐻𝗂 up from the ground as if he were a plant, exclaiming happily that they were ready to go. He suggested they head back home before tea, grabbing onto 𝐻𝗂𝐻𝗂 one last time. In an instant, they appeared in Midoriya's bedroom. He dusted off his hands and waved goodbye to 𝐻𝗂𝐻𝗂 as he left the blonde's room. As the number 3 hero walked down the stairs, he found Mitsuki in the living room. She asked about his mission, and he replied with a smirk that it had been accomplished. He had talked to 𝐻𝗂𝐻𝗂, and he should no longer be causing trouble. Mitsuki smiled proudly, acknowledging her nephew's success. After a brief moment of shared smiles, Midoriya glanced at the time and decided it was time to leave. Mitsuki teased him, suggesting that Namuri was calling for another date. Midoriya's face turned slightly red as he stammered that he had places to be. He opened the door, waved goodbye, and jumped into the air. Upon arriving at his apartment, he grabbed his keys and unlocked the door, slamming it behind him. He quickly changed from his hero costume into his green pajamas, taking advantage of his super speed. Walking to his bed, he flopped down, burying his face in the cushions. As he relaxed, his mind wandered back to everything that had happened that day. Turning over to gaze at the ceiling fan, he pondered aloud whether he should take that job at 𝐴. The entrance exams chapter begins. Midoriya felt a wave of nostalgia as he stood before the gates of 𝐴, the place where he had trained to become a hero. He walked closer to the gates, and the 𝐴 security system activated, recognizing him. The robotic voice announced his arrival, welcoming him as the door opened for the number 3 hero. As he entered the main hallways of 𝐴, he spotted some familiar faces. He greeted his friends with a cheerful wave. Mirio Togata, the blonde second year, along with the rest of the big 3, Nijire Hado and Tamaki Amajiki, were nearby. Nijire expressed her excitement at seeing him, while Tamaki quietly admired his presence. Mirio, always cheerful, asked if Midoriya would help train them again, recalling how much fun it had been the previous year. Midoriya chuckled and explained that he had other matters to attend to with Principal Nizu. Mirio smiled and waved goodbye as Midoriya walked away. Approaching the principal's office, Midoriya took a deep breath and knocked 3 times. The principal's voice called him in, and he opened the door to find Nizu calmly pouring himself a cup of tea. Midoriya took a seat opposite Nizu's desk and brought up All Might's return to teaching. Nizu confirmed that it was indeed official and casually sipped his tea. Midoriya then mentioned the offer that had been extended to him. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 inquired if All Might had already spoken to him about it, and Midoriya confirmed that he had received the offer the day before. After some hesitation, he expressed his longing to accept the proposal. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 was overjoyed, nearly spilling his tea in excitement. Midoriya humbly acknowledged the honor of returning to teach a new generation of heroes. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 explained that Midoriya would be taking Aizawa's spot as the homeroom teacher, collaborating with other heroes like All Might, Present Mic, ectoplasm, and Midnight. Midoriya was about to respond when the door burst open, revealing Midnight. She greeted him playfully, reminding him of their next date while gripping her WHP tightly. Midoriya, feeling flustered, struggled to find a way out of the situation. Suddenly he pointed behind Midnight, exclaiming in alarm, which caused both 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 and Midnight to turn around, only to find nothing there. In a moment of panic, Midoriya jumped out of the window, leaving a Deku-shaped hole in the glass as he fell to the ground below. Midnight sighed in annoyance, and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 chuckled, noting that the incident would be deducted from Midoriya's paycheck. 10 months had passed since Midoriya officially joined you as a teacher, and the time for the entrance exams had arrived. He had mostly returned to regular hero duties but also dedicated time to learning how to be an effective teacher, engaging in discussions with Eraserhead, Present Mic, Vlad King, and All Might. As Midoriya approached the observation deck, where the staff awaited the physical portion of the entrance exams, he kicked the door open with a smirk, surprising everyone inside. All Might, dressed in a well-tailored suit, greeted him warmly, expressing his pleasure at Midoriya's presence. Vlad King sighed, expressing his annoyance at Midoriya's playful nature, while Aizawa shared his own irritation, recalling how he should have expelled Midoriya when he had the chance. Midoriya, undeterred, playfully hugged both heroes, insisting he wasn't that bad. Their irritation was palpable as their eyes shifted toward the entrance exam arena, where a diverse group of potential students began to walk through. Midoriya quickly released them and pressed his face against the window, eagerly observing the newcomers. He expressed his excitement about the amazing quirks he expected to see. No matter how much his personality might shift, he would always be a nerd for quirks, even keeping up with his hero journals whenever he had the time. Aizawa mentioned his hope that this group would perform better than the last. Midoriya responded, noting that expelling nearly the entire class last year seemed a bit extreme. Aizawa explained that those students simply did not have what it took to be heroes, and it was better to let them go early before reality set in. Midoriya pointed out that this year was different, as the criteria for determining a person's worthiness in the hero course had changed, moving away from just big numbers and flashy quirks. Aizawa smirked slightly, teasing Midoriya about his own powerful quirk. Their conversation was interrupted as Present Mic prepared to address the students. He appeared on the screen in front of the many examinees, welcoming them to the practical part of their entrance exam. He explained that they would be brought into a simulated city where they would face dangerous robots to earn points. He advised those whose quirks did not allow for high output damage to aim for the power buttons on the robots. Some contestants felt reassured by this explanation, including an invisible girl and a purple-haired boy. Present Mic continued, detailing the different types of robots and their point values. 1 point for easy villains, 2 points for medium villains, 3 points for hard villains, and 0 points for arena traps. With the rules laid out, it was time for the entrance exam to begin. Izuku observed the contestants, noting the blue-haired boy with glasses as 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴𝐫's younger brother. He remembered how 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴𝐫 had spoken highly of him, predicting he would become an amazing hero. It was strange that he did not see Endeavor's son among the participants. Perhaps he was entering solely through recommendation, which might be for the best given the power of his quirk. Present Mic called for the start of the exam, urging the students to rush into the city without hesitation. The 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐫 brother dashed forward, showcasing impressive speed and agility as he dispatched several robots. A brunette girl demonstrated her gravity manipulation quirk, making robots levitate before crashing to the ground, though it clearly took a toll on her. A smug blonde boy fired a laser from his stomach, propelling himself across the simulated city. Izuku couldn't help but fanboy over their abilities, while Vlad King reluctantly agreed with him. As the exam progressed, Many students showcased their quirks until the intimidating zero-pointer appeared, causing every contestant to flee in panic. The brunette girl found herself trapped, her eyes widening in terror as she saw the massive shadow of the zero-pointer looming behind her. She braced for impact, but nothing happened. When she opened her eyes, she was surprised to see Deku standing beside her, effortlessly holding up the zero-pointer with a finger. He asked if she was all right, and she became flustered at his presence. Deku lifted her from the rubble and, with a slight push, made the zero-pointer lose its balance, causing it to topple into the city. He was surprised at how easy it had been to push it over. Aizawa groaned from the observation deck, commenting on Midoriya's tendency to show off. As he helped the girl up, she was internally panicking at the fact that Deku was holding her hand. He asked if she could walk, and after checking herself for injuries, she confirmed she could. As he started to walk away, she called out for his autograph. Midoriya playfully told her it was already done, along with a selfie, leaving her in shock as she found his signature on her jacket and a picture of them together on her phone. Midoriya returned to the observation deck, greeting his classmates and taking a seat. All Might pointed out that the zero-pointer would have stopped on its own, but Midoriya explained that his hero instinct had kicked in. He relaxed in his chair, while All Might sighed, both amused and proud of his students' antics. Chapter name: Class 1A. Chapter begins. The day had finally arrived for Izuku Midoriya to meet the class he would be teaching for the next 3 years. Following a villain attack during his 3rd year at 𝐴, the school had implemented a dorm system for students, which had proven successful in fostering their growth as heroes. Midoriya entered the teacher's lounge, bustling with activity as the new school year commenced. He spotted Aizawa on the couch, wrapped in his iconic yellow sleeping bag. With a playful smirk, Midoriya crept up behind him and peeked over the edge. He greeted Aizawa with his usual energetic demeanor, but Aizawa groaned in response, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Midoriya, undeterred, suggested they head into town for snacks, envisioning a whimsical scene of them happily skipping along the sidewalk, tossing flowers to bystanders. In contrast, Aizawa imagined being dragged across the pavement in his sleeping bag like a suitcase. Aizawa firmly declined Midoriya's invitation and got out of his sleeping bag, walking away. Midoriya attempted to argue that it was serious hero work, but Aizawa dismissed him, confident in Midoriya's abilities. Frustrated, Midoriya watched as Aizawa left, feeling a twinge of disappointment. Meanwhile, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stood before the 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴Lion storms, taking a deep breath. He resolved to get through the day with his classmates before becoming a pro. As he dragged his suitcase, he accidentally bumped into a boy with spiky red hair. The boy introduced himself as Ejiro Kirishima, and 𝐴, though initially annoyed, decided to be civil. After a brief exchange, a tall boy in a uniform rushed over, commenting on 𝐴's disheveled appearance. 𝐴 scoffed at the boy's concern, while Kirishima chimed in, pointing out that the official guidelines didn't require a tie. The blue-haired boy introduced himself as Tenya Ida, but 𝐴, uninterested, walked away, leaving Kirishima and Ida to wonder about his attitude. Just then, Mina Ishido appeared with a boy who had yellow hair. Kirishima greeted them enthusiastically, and Mina introduced her friend, Denki Kaminari. The two boys exchanged friendly handshakes, signaling the start of a new friendship. Meanwhile, Hitoshi Shinso, a purple-haired boy with an unconventional hairstyle, arrived on campus. Reflecting on his journey to 𝐴, he was approached by a girl in a uniform who introduced herself as Ochako Uraraka. They quickly bonded over their shared excitement about meeting their homeroom teacher. As the group gathered outside the 𝐒𝐮𝐴Lion dorms, they speculated about who their teacher might be. 𝐶𝐮𝐬𝐴 wondered aloud, while Minoru Mineta jokingly hoped for a glamorous teacher, only to be playfully reprimanded by 𝐴𝐴. 𝐴, impatient, demanded to know where their teacher was, and just then, Denki pointed to the sky, capturing everyone's attention. A figure floated down, smirking at the students. As he landed, their jaws dropped in disbelief. Kirishima and 𝐴 exchanged shocked glances, realizing who it was. The class collectively exclaimed in surprise that Midoriya was their homeroom teacher. Midoriya, with a confident grin, acknowledged their reaction, while 𝐻𝐿, overwhelmed with emotion, nearly lunged at him, only to be restrained by Kirishima and Kaminari. Uraraka, blushing furiously, asked 𝗀𝐿 to catch her, while he politely declined, bewildered by the unfolding chaos. Hiro felt confused about the situation. The young heiress to the Yaoyorozu family, Momo Yaoyorozu, shared her thoughts on the overreaction. Izuku clapped his hands together, filled with excitement, and suggested giving everyone a tour of their dorms. As he guided his classmates through the Heights Alliance dorms, they finally arrived at the living quarters. Kaminari looked around in awe and exclaimed how impressive the place was. Midoriya, with his hands raised in enthusiasm, confirmed it was indeed the living quarters. He approached a desk, lifting it with a finger to reveal drawings he had made of himself in chibi form, still visible after nearly 7 years. He smiled at the nostalgia before putting the desk down. However, Kirishima interrupted with a serious tone, asking if the place had a Wii. His serious demeanor quickly shifted to childlike wonder. Midoriya chuckled and proudly declared himself the undisputed king of Mario Kart Wii since Kirishima, feeling competitive, announced his intention to claim the throne. Midoriya grinned mischievously, ready for the challenge. Momo cleared her throat, reminding Midoriya that he was supposed to be giving the orientation. Realizing he had strayed off topic, Midoriya quickly instructed everyone to set up their rooms and meet him at the U training grounds in their PE uniforms. He waved goodbye, leaving the Class 1A students to process the last 20 minutes with their new homeroom teacher. Jiro commented on Midoriya's bizarre personality. 40 minutes later, 𝐻𝐿 exited his dorm room, now dressed in his PE uniform and carrying a bag with his uniform and other items. He waited in the common room, where he was approached by Kaminari and Kirishima, who were curious about his earlier interaction with Midoriya. 𝐻𝐿, slightly annoyed, explained that their mothers were best friends from school. When he was 2, Midoriya's mother brought him along to visit. Kaminari was excited by this revelation, calling 𝐻𝐿 basically Deku's little brother. 𝐻𝐿, feeling embarrassed, growled at Kaminari, recalling how he had been Deku's biggest fan when he was 9. Meanwhile, the girls were in another part of the common room, getting to know each other. Mina asked Uraraka about her reaction when Midoriya introduced himself. Uraraka nervously laughed, trying to downplay her response. Mina and Jiro quickly realized that Uraraka had a crush on Midoriya, leading to a flustered reaction from her. Uraraka explained that he had been her childhood hero and that she found him cool and attractive. Momo respected her admiration for a great hero, while 𝐶𝐿 bluntly commented on her taste in men. Just then, Ida marched into the room, announcing that Midoriya's lesson would start in under 15 minutes, urging everyone to head to the training grounds. Momo gathered her things and encouraged the girls to follow her, while Mina jumped up, eager to keep up. When they arrived, Midoriya greeted his students excitedly, holding shopping bags. 𝗧𝗍 noticed the bags and asked if he had gone shopping during the break. Midoriya confirmed it with a smirk, and Mina's eyes lit up when she recognized the bags from the 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 cake shop. They shared a moment of joy over the delicious cakes. After a brief exchange, Midoriya clapped his hands together, ready to start the quirk apprehension test. He called up 𝐻𝐿, who cringed at the nickname but stepped up to the pitch. Midoriya instructed him to throw the ball as hard as he could using his quirk. 𝐻𝐿, fueled with determination, unleashed his explosive power, sending the ball soaring far into the distance. Midoriya checked the results, announcing the impressive distance to the awe of their classmates. Mina expressed her excitement to try, and Kirishima felt fired up for his turn. Midoriya assured them they would all have their chance, and the first test, the 50-meter dash, was about to begin. In a flash, Midoriya appeared in a PE teacher uniform, ready to lead the class. Midoriya shouted with the authority of a drill sergeant, prompting Ida to respond quickly. He dashed to the starting line, ready for the race. Midoriya yelled for everyone to get ready and then blew the whistle, signaling the start of the dash. Tenya Ida surged ahead, clocking an impressive time of 3.4 seconds. 𝐶𝐿 followed with a time of 5.58 seconds, while Masahiro Ojiro came in at 5.49 seconds. 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 finished with a time of 7:15 seconds, and Yuga Aoyama showcased his flair with a score of 5:51 seconds. Mina Ishido matched Ojiro's time of 5:49 seconds, and Katsuki Bakugo used his explosive quirk to achieve a time of 5:13 seconds. In the grip strength test, the class displayed remarkable human strength, but no one could match 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's incredible lifting strength of 540 kilograms. During the ball throw test, Katsuki Bakugo's impressive score was challenged when 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, the ultimate Deku fan and round-faced heroine, threw the ball to infinity. The class watched in shock, while Bakugo muttered angrily under his breath. The overall test results were announced. Momo Yaoyorozu took first place, followed by Katsuki Bakugo in second, Shoto Todoroki in third, Tenya Ida in fourth, and Fumikage Tokoyami in fifth. The rankings continued with Mezu Shoji, Masahiro Ojiro, Ejiro Kirishima, Mina Ishido, 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, Koji Koda, Rikido Sato, Tsuyu Azui, Yuga Aoyama, 𝗪𝐿, Denki Kaminari, Kyoka Jiro, Hitoshi Shinso, Toru Hagakure, and finally, Minoru Mineta in last place. Mineta's reaction was dramatic as he burst into tears, while Shinso scoffed at the results. The students noticed their teacher furiously writing in his notebook. Denki asked if he was grading them, to which Midoriya chuckled and clarified that it was just his personal hero journal for noting impressive quirks. He then instructed the class to head to the changing rooms, as class would start in 20 minutes. As Shinso was about to leave, he heard the voice of the number 3 hero calling him, making him stop in his tracks. He turned around to face Midoriya, who wanted to discuss Shinso's performance. Shinso sighed, feeling apprehensive about the conversation. He thought to himself that he had already belittled himself enough and didn't need the number 3 hero to make it worse. Midoriya reassured him that he wasn't there to criticize but to help improve his physical performance. This surprised Shinso, who had never received such support before. Midoriya shared his own experience, explaining that he had struggled with his quirk when he first awakened it at 14. He had nearly been expelled due to a lack of control, but he had trained hard to improve his abilities and physical strength. Shinso was taken aback by Midoriya's story and expressed disbelief that the renowned hero had faced such challenges. Midoriya smiled and mentioned that he knew someone who could help Shinso with his own issues. He introduced Eraserhead, an underground hero with the ability to erase quirks temporarily, and noted that he was also a skilled fighter. Midoriya handed Shinso a note, indicating that Eraserhead was interested in his abilities and that he could learn a lot from him. As Midoriya walked away to prepare for the next class, Shinso looked at the paper in his hand, and a rare, genuine smile appeared on his face. Chapter name: Hero Training. Chapter begins. Class 1A had just returned from lunch, and their last lesson had been a rather dull English class with present mic. Uraraka wondered what was next as she took her seat, hoping it wouldn't be math. Siro expressed his longing for something more exciting, while Mineta quietly wished for midnight to make an appearance. Suddenly, Deku burst through the door, pulling a comically large present box behind him. He greeted the class with enthusiasm, walking to the front of the room. Kirishima asked about the contents of the box, and Midoriya smirked, transforming into a blur before reappearing in a magician's outfit. He announced that he would perform a magic trick, bowing dramatically. Kaminari questioned where their teacher found such costumes, while Jiro commented on the creepiness of overly excited adults. Mina, however, was eager for the show to begin. Midoriya, fully in character, declared that he would reveal the greatest hero of all time from the box. With a flourish, he counted down, and All Might dramatically emerged from the box, surprising the students. Kaminari exclaimed in awe, while Kirishima expressed his surprise at All Might being a teacher. Azui noted the costume's vintage style, and Ojiro admired its unique look. Midoriya joined in the admiration, despite having worked with All Might for years. All Might explained that he taught hero basic training, a subject focused on the fundamentals of being a hero, and announced that they would start with combat training. Bakugo, relieved, eagerly anticipated the chance to unleash his power. All Might revealed costume bags tailored to each student's quirk registrations, and the class excitedly prepared to test their new hero outfits. He instructed them to change and gather at ground beta, to which the class responded enthusiastically as they rushed out of the room. Once they left, All Might sighed, feeling the heat of the classroom. He asked Midoriya if he had punched air holes in the box, to which Midoriya sheepishly admitted he had forgotten. All Might expressed his shock, and Midoriya nervously chuckled, feeling the weight of the vestiges of one for all reminding him of his oversight. Meanwhile, 𝗀𝐿 emerged from the changing room, adjusting his jacket, which covered his mouth. His hero costume was simple, featuring a few gadgets on his belt. Ochako approached him in her space suit-inspired outfit, complimenting his costume. 𝗀𝐿 responded calmly, downplaying his appearance. Kaminari then chimed in, praising Uraraka's costume, but was quickly pulled away by Jiro, who admonished him for his behavior. Uraraka and 𝗀𝐿 decided to head to the training grounds to meet their teacher. All the students gathered around All Might and Midoriya, who expressed his excitement over their costumes. All Might echoed this sentiment, reminding them that they were now heroes. He encouraged them to be aware of their new roles. Iida inquired if they would be participating in training simulations similar to the entrance exams. All Might laughed and clarified that they had something different planned, nudging Midoriya to explain. Midoriya quickly vanished and returned with a large whiteboard, outlining the rules for the training. He explained that the exercise would involve group battles, with one side acting as heroes trying to disarm a bomb, while the other side would defend it. Kirishima likened it to a game, and Midoriya enthusiastically agreed, revealing his inner gamer. All Might announced that teams would be decided by a lottery, and soon enough, the matchups were established. Uraraka and 𝗀𝐿 were paired together, and they exchanged smiles at the news. Meanwhile, Yaoyorozu expressed her discontent with her own teammate. All Might announced that Team A would be the heroes, and Team D would be the villains. He instructed everyone else to head to the monitor room while the villain team set up. He reminded Bakugo and Iida to think like villains, emphasizing the importance of approaching the training as if it were a real battle. All Might encouraged the students, urging them not to be afraid of getting hurt. Iida responded with enthusiasm, as if under the command of a drill sergeant. Bakugo, however, dismissed the orders with a grunt as he and Iida entered the building. The rest of the students made their way to the monitor room to watch the exercise begin. As Uraraka walked alongside 𝗀𝐿, she couldn't help but ask about his quirk. She inquired about its nature, and 𝗀𝐿, after a moment, requested that she keep it to herself. He explained that his quirk was called brainwashing, which allowed him to control anyone who engaged in conversation with him. Uraraka was amazed, declaring that it was definitely Pro-Hero material. 𝗀𝐿 was surprised by her lack of fear, as many viewed his quirk as villainous. Uraraka reassured him, expressing her belief that quirks are not inherently good or evil, and that 𝗀𝐿's was safe in his hands. 𝗀𝐿 felt a warmth from her words, grateful for her kindness. Meanwhile, on the villain team, Iida asked Bakugo about his plan. Bakugo simply grinned and declared his intention to attack, confidently walking out of the main room with the fake bomb. Iida sighed, realizing he was now on bomb-watching duty. Back with the hero team, they rushed through the hallways when suddenly, Bakugo burst through the walls with a fierce grin. He called out to them, but 𝗀𝐿 attempted to use his quirk. However, Bakugo was already in front of them, ready to unleash an explosion. In a split second, 𝗀𝐿 tackled Uraraka out of harm's way, but the blast still caught him, leaving him momentarily dazed. Uraraka, concerned, called out to him, and he assured her he was fine, urging her to run ahead while he dealt with Bakugo. As Uraraka took off, Bakugo noticed her escape and charged up an explosion in his hand. 𝗀𝐿, determined to distract Bakugo, taunted him, sticking out his tongue. Bakugo, enraged, lunged at 𝗀𝐿, who stood his ground, revealing a turret on his arm. He fired the weapon, launching a net that ensnared Bakugo, trapping him against the wall. Bakugo growled in frustration, struggling against the net. 𝗀𝐿 smirked, teasing Bakugo about being trapped like an angry Pomeranian. Bakugo, fueled by anger, began to break free, landing heavily on the floor. He shouted about his determination to fight, but 𝗀𝐮𝐲 calmly commanded him to walk out of the training grounds. To everyone's surprise, 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽 complied, leaving the arena. Kirishima was baffled, unable to understand 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽's sudden change in behavior, while Jiro pointed out that he had only known 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽 for a short time. Kaminari mused that sometimes it only takes a brief encounter to understand someone, especially someone like 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽. Deku watched with pride as 𝗀𝐮𝐲 demonstrated his abilities, recognizing that this test would be beneficial for both 𝗀𝐮𝐲 and 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽, teaching 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽 the importance of strategy over reckless aggression. All Might announced that 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽 had forfeited the match, leaving everyone puzzled. Back in the test, Iida called out for 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽, fearing the worst. Uraraka, noticing 𝗀𝐮𝐲's success, commented on it aloud, catching Iida's attention. He playfully challenged her, adopting a villainous tone, which made Uraraka laugh. Iida declared he was coming at her with full force, activating his quirk and launching himself toward her. Uraraka barely dodged, causing Iida to crash into a wall, but he quickly recovered and propelled himself forward again. With a chuckle, Uraraka used her quirk to lift the flooring pads into the air, playfully stating that it would be rude not to showcase her abilities as well. She commanded the pads to drop down on Iida, who could only brace himself against the falling debris. After a moment, Iida crawled out from the rubble, still maintaining his villain persona. However, All Might's voice rang out, announcing that the bomb had been disabled and the hero team had won. Uraraka celebrated, hugging the bomb triumphantly. 𝗀𝐮𝐲 entered the room, smirking at Uraraka's victory over Iida. The trio made their way back to the monitor room, where the excitement of the other students was palpable, with Midoriya acting as his usual enthusiastic self. Suddenly, 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽, having escaped 𝗀𝐮𝐲's control, lunged at 𝗀𝐮𝐲, but was halted by a black WHP that restrained him like a parent keeping a child in check. 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽 growled in frustration as Midoriya held him back until he calmed down. Midoriya praised 𝗀𝐮𝐲 for his clever use of gadgets and for taking the blast for Uraraka, checking on how he felt. 𝗀𝐮𝐲 explained that while he had only taken splash damage, it still hurt, and he planned to visit Recovery Girl. Midoriya encouraged him to go before the day ended. He also commended Uraraka for her impressive use of the flooring pads as projectiles and distractions. All Might added his praise for Iida's performance, noting his defensive strategy and commitment to playing the role of a villain. Deku wondered who should be chosen for the overall best performance. Kirishima suggested that 𝗀𝐮𝐲 should receive the title, especially for bravely taking a blast for Uraraka, which he considered very commendable. Kaminari chimed in, noting how 𝗀𝐮𝐲 had managed to make 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽 walk away, prompting everyone to question what his quirk actually was. Uraraka, knowing the truth about 𝗀𝐮𝐲's ability, chose to keep it to herself out of respect for her friend's privacy. Midoriya agreed that 𝗀𝐮𝐲 indeed deserved the title of MVP for that game. It was hard to believe that this was just the beginning of their lesson. Chapter name: The Strongest. Chapter begins. Kaminari eagerly tugged at 𝗀𝐮𝐲's arm, urging him to share his quirk. Mina joined in, pulling on 𝗀𝐮𝐲's other arm, demanding to know why he was keeping it a secret. 𝗀𝐮𝐲, clearly exhausted by their persistent questioning, reiterated that he would not reveal it. Tsuyu then suggested that Uraraka might know about 𝗀𝐮𝐲's quirk since they had trained together, prompting shock from the others. Mina, filled with excitement, dashed over to Uraraka, pleading for her to disclose 𝗀𝐮𝐲's quirk. Uraraka simply shook her head, stating that she had made a promise and intended to keep it. Mina tried to negotiate, offering to stop teasing Uraraka for a week, then 2, and finally 4 weeks, but each time Uraraka remained firm in her refusal. Mina dramatically fell to her knees in defeat, leaving 𝗀𝐮𝐲 and Uraraka puzzled by her overreaction. As more students filed into the room and took their seats, Midoriya-Sensei finally arrived. He clapped his hands together and greeted the class with his usual cheerful smile. He explained that they would be selecting a class representative, a role that offered extra recognition at U. Mina jumped up, eager to be chosen, and soon the room erupted with students expressing their longing to take on the role. Amidst the chaos, Midoriya called for calm, emphasizing that they would determine the representative through a democratic vote. 20 minutes later, 𝗫𝐻𝐻𝐽's frustrated voice rang out as he realized he had received no votes. Midoriya announced the results, revealing that Momo Yaoyorozu had been elected as Class 1A's new representative. Momo blushed at the support from her classmates and promised to do her best in the role. Midoriya then congratulated Tenya Ida for receiving the second most votes, making him the vice president. Ida expressed his gratitude and commitment to the position. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, students rushed to leave. Midoriya wished them a pleasant lunch but asked Todoroki and Mineta to stay behind for a brief one-on-one discussion, leaving them puzzled about why they were singled out. Mineta was the first to speak up, nervously asking Midoriya about the purpose of their meeting. Midoriya explained that it concerned Mineta's behavior during the last hero training exercise, particularly regarding his interactions with Momo. He expressed concern over how Mineta spoke about her and other female classmates. Mineta stammered, struggling to find the right words, aware that his thoughts could jeopardize his place at U. Midoriya reassured him that he understood the challenges of being a teenager but emphasized that such behavior was unacceptable. He affirmed his belief in Mineta's potential to become a great hero, giving him a chance to improve. After Mineta left, Todoroki entered the room and took a seat at Midoriya's desk. Midoriya welcomed him and inquired about his first week at U. Todoroki remarked that it had been interesting to see everyone's quirks. Midoriya chuckled, reminiscing about when Todoroki had declared his intention to surpass him. Todoroki reaffirmed his goal of becoming number one, determined to prove himself to his father without relying on his fire quirk. Midoriya then addressed Todoroki's refusal to use his father's quirk, adopting a mock-serious tone. He explained that it was unfair to hold back when everyone else was striving to be their best. Todoroki insisted that he could still become a top hero using only his ice powers. Midoriya sighed and posed a hypothetical scenario. If Todoroki were a pro-hero and faced a situation where his fire could save lives, would he really allow people to suffer just to spite his father? Midoriya spoke with a hint of frustration in his voice, questioning Todoroki's choices. Todoroki, carefully considering his response, struggled to find the right words to counter Midoriya's point, realizing that he was indeed correct. Midoriya placed a hand on his head and urged Todoroki to enjoy his lunch, dismissing him. It was unusual to see the typically energetic and cheerful Midoriya so agitated. Todoroki awkwardly agreed and left the room. Midoriya kicked open the door to the teacher's lounge, where Aizawa, Mike, and Vlad King were gathered. He sighed, clearly exhausted from his argument with Todoroki. Aizawa raised an eyebrow at Midoriya's dramatic expression of fatigue. Midoriya, in a playful tone, exaggerated his exhaustion, prompting Vlad King to inquire if it was about Endeavor's son. Midoriya jumped onto a chair, reclining as he explained that Todoroki was reluctant to use his full quirk due to family issues. He casually pulled out a smoothie and took a sip. Present Mike commented on Endeavor's serious nature, while Midoriya quietly noted that at least Endeavor was present for his son. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the lounge, announcing an intruder alert. Aizawa sprang from his seat, alarmed. Present Mike questioned how the intruders had bypassed the defenses. Vlad King speculated that it was the persistent media reporters trying to interview students. Midoriya stood up, ready to investigate, stretching before vanishing from sight, surprising the others. At one of the less defended sections of U.S. gates, a news reporter in a suit struggled to climb the gates, hoping to get an interview. Just as he reached the top, Midoriya appeared before him, catching him off guard. The reporter awkwardly greeted him, and Midoriya asked what he was doing. The reporter attempted to play it cool, but Midoriya stepped on his hands, causing him to fall. The reporter complained about being denied an interview, to which Midoriya responded that they were disrupting students' studies. An angry newswoman from the crowd threatened to write a negative article about Midoriya. He sarcastically feigned concern for his hero career before laughing and pointing out the reporter's questionable actions. With a wave, Midoriya vanished and reappeared back in the teacher's lounge, declaring the situation handled. Aizawa noted that the alarm had caused quite a stir in the cafeteria, but the students had managed to calm things down quickly. Midoriya chuckled, taking pride in his students' abilities, though Aizawa refused to give him credit. As break ended, Class 1A returned to their classroom, eager for hero training. Kirishima asked Midoriya what they had planned. With a smirk, Midoriya excitedly announced that they were going to the US. The students erupted in cheers, except for a few who looked confused. Denki and Mina chanted enthusiastically, while Midoriya giggled at their excitement. 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘, Mina, and Denki rushed to hug Midoriya, expressing their gratitude. Midoriya playfully instructed them to grab their hero costumes and get on the bus. When the students disembarked, they found themselves in an entirely different location, not Universal Studios Japan as they had expected. Mina pointed an accusing finger at Midoriya, while Kaminari voiced his disappointment. Tsu pointed out that it was unrealistic to travel from Mustafu to Osaka in under an hour. Midoriya shrugged, explaining that he had only said they were going to the USJ, not the theme park. 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘 challenged him, demanding to know where they actually were. Midoriya revealed that they were at the unforeseen simulation joint, where they would train in disaster scenarios. As they entered the facility, they were greeted by Pro-Hero 13, who welcomed them and prepared to start their training. Kirishima asked about All Might's absence and Midoriya explained that he was currently engaged in press talks but might join them later. Ojiro expressed disappointment, but Kirishima soon noticed something alarming. Portals began opening in the simulation area, unleashing waves of villains. 3 figures emerged, a dark figure cloaked in black flames, a massive monster with a brain exposed, and a smaller man in a trench coat who collided with the flaming figure before falling to the ground. "What did I tell you about running into people like that?" The black-flamed villain yelled at the childish masked man. The person known as 𝗧𝗍𝗃 responded in an excited tone, expressing his enthusiasm for his first mission. Kurohige reminded him who was in charge of the mission, pulling out a microphone to address everyone. He announced over the loudspeaker that they were the League of Villains and intended to eliminate the heroes. Meanwhile, Midoriya observed from above, smirking as he prepared to take action. He told 13 to watch over the kids while he handled the situation. Kaminari expressed concern about the number of villains present, but Midoriya reassured his students, declaring himself the strongest. As Midoriya casually descended the stairs, villains surrounded him, quirks at the ready. He mocked them, questioning their capabilities. A female villain activated her quirk, summoning guns from her fingers and firing at him. Midoriya effortlessly caught the bullets with super speed, dropping the crumpled metal to the ground. The female villain was left stunned as he appeared before her and knocked her unconscious with a swift punch. He then dropped her to the floor and asked who was next. The villains, shocked by his display of power, charged at him, but Midoriya simply smiled at their futile attempts. One villain charged forward with a sword hand, letting out a war cry as he swung down at Midoriya. However, an electric barrier appeared around him, shattering the blade and sending the top half flying. Midoriya advised the villain to be careful where he pointed that thing, tapping the broken blade and sending the man flying backward into the lake. Just as Midoriya was about to continue his fun, his danger sense tingled, alerting him to the threat facing his class. He looked up to see a storm engulfing them and cursed under his breath, realizing he had entrusted 13 with one job. He swiftly dealt with a villain attempting to sneak up on him. Mineta screamed loudly enough for Midoriya to hear from across the UE. Midoriya quickly climbed the stairs, using his black WHP to secure himself to the pillars on either side. He launched himself into the air, activating his float quirk. With his superior reflexes, he was able to see where each class member was, moving them safely to the bottom of the stairs near the entrance. Mineta, realizing he was back on solid ground, stopped screaming in shock. Momo was equally surprised to find herself no longer airborne. They all turned to Midoriya, who offered them a reassuring smile, promising to return. Meanwhile, Bakugo pondered the situation, realizing the vast difference he needed to overcome to be number one. Midoriya reappeared at the top of the stairs, facing off against Kurohige, who was furious about being prevented from scattering the students. As Kurohige unleashed his dark essence, Midoriya calmly countered with a powerful burst of wind that dissipated the attack and sent Kurohige crashing into the wall. Kurohige, feeling the impact, acknowledged Midoriya's strength and decided to retreat to regroup with 𝗧𝗍𝗃 and the monster. Uraraka and the rest of the students approached Midoriya, expressing their concerns about being cut off from outside communication and whether they should evacuate. Midoriya, confident, assured them that he had everything under control as they descended the stairs to regroup. Bakugo launched an explosion at one of the villains, while Kirishima knocked out another just as Midoriya and the others arrived. Midoriya noted that everyone was back together, and Kirishima asked what their next move would be. Midoriya, filled with excitement, announced that they would turn the villain attack into a lesson on how to defeat villains. The class was taken aback by his enthusiasm. Just as Midoriya began to explain, a large villain charged at them, clearly losing patience. However, a black bolt of energy from Midoriya's quirk struck the villain, causing him to collapse. Midoriya scolded the interruption before pulling the energy away, allowing the villain to catch his breath. Continuing, Midoriya explained that he would take on the villains and that the students might learn something in the process. He approached the remaining villains, cracking his knuckles. With a casual wave of his hands, a strong gust of wind knocked the small-time villains off their feet, effectively removing them from the battle. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was also sent flying but seemed to enjoy the ride, cheering as he went. 𝗀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, frustrated, created a portal to catch him, teleporting 𝐂𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 into his hands. 𝐂𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 expressed his excitement, exclaiming how Midoriya had saved him. 𝗀𝐻𝐿, however, dropped 𝐂𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to the floor, leaving the students in awe of their teacher's effortless display of strength. Ida was shocked, never imagining Midoriya to be this powerful. Kaminari echoed the sentiment, questioning how someone could be so strong. ♯NSO also shared his amazement, realizing why Midoriya was the number 3 hero. The only villains still standing were 𝗀𝐻𝐿, 𝐂𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, and the giant monster. Midoriya approached them with a smirk, addressing the villains as the big bad bosses. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 scoffed, warning him that while he may be the number 3 hero, the Nomu possessed strength rivaling that of All Might in his prime. The class was left stunned by this revelation. Mineta, overwhelmed, burst into tears at the thought of facing such a formidable opponent. Todoroki questioned if Midoriya could truly handle the threat, while Bakugo clenched his fists, worried for someone he viewed as an older brother. Suddenly, Midoriya began to laugh, much to the confusion of both heroes and villains. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 questioned if he thought they were bluffing. Midoriya reassured him that it was merely amusing to think that the Nomu could defeat him. Kirishima wondered if Midoriya truly believed he was stronger than All Might, and Momo, the class president, confirmed her trust in him. 13 surprised her students by expressing her confidence in Midoriya. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 then ordered the Nomu to eliminate Midoriya. The creature let out a fierce battle cry and charged at him with an arm raised to strike. Midoriya chuckled, effortlessly parrying the punch and countering with a kick that sent the Nomu staggering back. The monster growled and attempted another attack, but Midoriya dodged with his arms behind his back, blocking the mindless punches with ease. Encouraging the Nomu to put more effort into its attacks, Midoriya continued to evade and counter. He leaped into the air to deliver a powerful kick, but the Nomu managed to grab his legs. Midoriya smirked, summoning a dark energy blade from his black WHP quirk and slicing off the Nomu's hands. The creature let out a pained roar as Midoriya landed back on the ground, the severed hands still attached to his foot. As the Nomu's hands regenerated, Midoriya rolled his eyes, having encountered enough regenerating villains in his experiences. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 explained that the Nomu not only had regeneration and enhanced strength but also shock absorption. 𝐂𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 cheered on 𝗀𝐻𝐿 like a child supporting a parent. Midoriya questioned if the creature was truly alive, and 𝗀𝐻𝐿 confirmed that it was the pinnacle of League engineering, designed to be an unstoppable force against hero society. With a wicked grin, Midoriya challenged the Nomu to show him its true strength. The monster charged forward, and Midoriya calmly imitated a gun with his fingers, saying "bang" as black WHP shot out and pierced the creature's heart, halting its advance. Midoriya reeled in the Nomu as if it were a fish, delivering a powerful punch to its gut that knocked the wind out of it. As the Nomu cringed in pain, Midoriya joked about it being a potential organ donor if it ever turned its life around. He then seemingly teleported behind the creature, delivering a roundhouse kick that sent it soaring into the air. Midoriya followed at incredible speed, landing a double hammer fist that sent the monster crashing down. Before it could hit the ground, Midoriya was already there, charging his fist with electricity. With a mighty shout, he delivered a final punch to the 𝗏𝗏's gut, causing a green crack to form in its body, radiating energy. The creature let out one last roar before exploding in a spectacular display. The students watched in shock as Midoriya effortlessly defeated a threat on the level of All Might. 𝗀𝐻𝐼, in disbelief, exclaimed that there was no way Midoriya could have taken down the 𝗏𝗏, which was stronger than the #1 hero. Shiggy, in awe, declared how cool Midoriya was. 𝗀𝐻𝐼 sighed at Shiggy's enthusiasm, warning that they had not seen the last of them. As 𝗀𝐻𝐼 and Shiggy vanished into a portal, the heroes celebrated their victory, surrounding Midoriya with cheers. Kirishima excitedly punched the air, mimicking Midoriya's earlier moves, expressing how amazing it was to witness such power. "It was awesome," Mina exclaimed, following up with her excitement. Kaminari chimed in, praising Midoriya as the strongest. Midoriya, feeling grateful, thanked them and suggested they leave, as he was starving. As they walked toward the exit, 𝗀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 pointed out the unconscious goons scattered around the USJ and asked Midoriya what he planned to do about them. Midoriya responded that 13 would call a hero for assistance and then eagerly asked his students who was up for some shawarma. Sato expressed his relief at the thought of food, and Momo agreed, saying she was also hungry. They all exited the USJ and boarded the bus. Meanwhile, two villains appeared in a bar. An unknown voice from the TV greeted 𝗀𝐻𝐼 and Shiggy, asking how their mission had gone. 𝗀𝐻𝐼 began to respond, but Shiggy interrupted, boasting that 𝗀𝐻𝐼 and the 𝗏𝗏 had been defeated by Deku. 𝗀𝐻𝐼, slightly annoyed, confirmed that Midoriya had easily taken down the 𝗏𝗏, which had power rivaling All Might's. The mysterious voice acknowledged this, surprising 𝗀𝐻𝐼. 𝗀𝐻𝐼 then asked if the voice had known the mission would fail from the start. The voice admitted that the purpose was to gauge its own strength against Midoriya, revealing that there was still much work to be done. Meanwhile, Shiggy let out a small, sinister laugh, hinting that he might not be as straightforward as he appeared. This chapter turned out to be longer than anticipated, reaching 4K words. Readers might be curious about why Shigaraki is different in this version, but they would find out soon. This would also be the final chapter before the My Hero Academia manga officially concluded, which felt somewhat daunting. After the USJ incident, several days had passed. Since Deku had dealt with the attack swiftly and decisively, he granted the students a day off to spend time with their friends and families, recognizing the trauma of a villain attack. However, this did not prevent the Heroes Association from organizing a meeting with major heroes, including All Might, Endeavor, Hawks, and many others. Yet one person was notably absent. Enji Todoroki, arms crossed at the table, expressed his frustration about Izuku Midoriya's tardiness. Aizawa reminded himself of all the meetings Midoriya had missed. Mountain Lady sighed, clearly annoyed, and exclaimed that they were wasting time waiting for him. Just then, Midoriya casually walked in, greeting everyone with a casual yo, as he took his seat. All Might welcomed him enthusiastically, which only fueled Endeavor's speculation about whether Midoriya was All Might's child. Mountain Lady scolded Midoriya for being late, to which he playfully responded, reminding her that he was indeed there now. He then leaned over and playfully reminisced about their past antics, specifically a time they had teased Hawks during a festival. Despite her annoyance, you couldn't help but chuckle at the memory. Hawks, sitting nearby, sighed in exasperation, pointing out that they were discussing him right in front of him. Just then, Endeavor erupted, demanding that they begin the meeting. All Might coughed to ease the tension and suggested they get started. Nizu opened the meeting by addressing the recent attack on the first-year students by a villain group intent on taking down All Might. Midnight questioned the villain's confidence, while All Might revealed that they had a secret weapon called 𝗏𝗏, which supposedly rivaled him in power, leaving everyone in shock. Edge Shot inquired if All Might had defeated it, to which All Might sheepishly admitted he had been preoccupied with the press. Present Mike turned to the #3 hero, incredulous that Midoriya had stopped something stronger than All Might. Midoriya, excited, confirmed this, while All Might acknowledged that Midoriya had easily disposed of the 𝗏𝐽. The revelation that Midoriya was stronger than All Might surprised everyone, and Endeavor speculated about Midoriya's abilities, suggesting he might be All Might's child. All Might laughed nervously, hoping their secret remained safe. Nizu noted that they would need Midoriya's strength if the League of Villains had more 𝗏𝐽. Midnight expressed concern about the potential for an army of them. Midoriya confidently stated that he could handle them, but the real issue lay with everyone else's ability to deal with such threats. Nizu concluded the meeting, and many heroes began to leave. Once outside, Midoriya stretched, relieved to be free from the cramped meeting. Suddenly, a fierce female voice called out to him, making him freeze. Miruko, the number 8 hero, jumped down from a building, challenging him to a fight. Despite her repeated losses, she never backed down from challenging him, and Midoriya respected her persistence. With a grin, he accepted her challenge, cracking his knuckles in preparation. The next day, all the students returned to their dorms, ready for their first day back in class. The atmosphere was lively as they discussed the USJ events until they heard a familiar teleportation sound. Midoriya-Sensei had arrived. He greeted his students with a wave, and they gathered around him, showering him with praise for his performance during the incident. Midoriya chuckled at their enthusiasm and eventually calmed them down, instructing them to take their seats. He announced that the sports festival was coming up soon, igniting excitement among the students. 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘 expressed surprise at the announcement, wondering how they could have lost track of time. Momo suggested that they were all still processing what had happened at the USJ a few days ago. Denki rubbed the back of his head, acknowledging that it was hard to shake off such an experience. Mineta excitedly pointed out how impressive Midoriya had been, effortlessly defeating the villains as if he were an overpowered protagonist completing early game side quests. Denki raised a question about why Midoriya was still ranked below Endeavor if he could take on a villain of All Might's caliber. Midoriya chuckled and explained that while strength was important, charisma and heroism also played significant roles, and All Might excelled in those areas. Jiro chimed in, noting that it still didn't clarify why Midoriya was below Endeavor. With a hint of secrecy, Midoriya shared that he declined the number 2 position every time there was an election to avoid upsetting Endeavor. Shoto surprisingly accepted this explanation. Midoriya then shifted the focus back to the class, encouraging them as the sports festival approached. 𝗀𝐿 suggested it was time to ramp up their training, to which Midoriya agreed, motivating his class to give their best effort to catch the attention of top heroes. Uraraka enthusiastically shouted her agreement, surprising her classmates with her fierce determination, transforming from the usually cheerful girl into a fierce competitor. Midoriya smiled at the energy radiating from his class, feeling proud as he recalled his own experiences, not just from the sports festival but from his entire journey at U. It was a bright summer day in 𝗏𝐻𝗎. The birds were singing, and the flowers were blooming. Days like this called for a beach party, and multiple teenagers shouted in excitement as they jumped onto 𝗏𝐻𝗎 beach, which was full of life. Everyone was enjoying the summer day, playing in the water, tossing beach ball, and building sandcastles. Well, not everyone. Karakoko Iwata, a blue-skinned girl, approached a blonde girl with shoulder-length hair and purple-pinkish eyes who was lounging in the shade on a towel. Iwata asked if she was going to join them at the beach. Yu Takayama, the blonde girl, replied that she preferred to relax away from the noise. Iwata walked away shyly, and Takayama sighed, adjusting her sunglasses as she tried to ignore the commotion around her. Just as she was settling in, a beach ball unexpectedly hit her in the face, causing her to exclaim in frustration about the interruption. 2 figures approached her, one of whom was Izuku Midoriya, a boy with green hair and freckles wearing a blue Hawaiian shirt. He apologized for the accident, but Takayama was not in the mood to forgive. She playfully scolded him, recalling how he used to be kinder in their first year. Just then, another figure joined them. Tenko Shimura, with black hair and red eyes, greeted Midoriya, and they exchanged friendly banter about their recent activities. As they reminisced, a flashback took the reader back to a different time in 𝗏𝐻𝗎. A young boy with messy blue hair and red eyes limped down the street, blood seeping from his arms. While many people looked on in concern, their expressions quickly shifted to fear and disgust when they saw his face, causing them to turn away. However, one person, Inko, noticed him while taking her son, Izuku, to school. Izuku spotted the injured boy and felt compelled to help. Despite his mother's worried calls, he rushed across the street to the boy, who was crying and frightened. The boy, overwhelmed with emotion, warned Izuku to stay back, fearing that his quirk would harm him. Izuku, undeterred, reassured him that he could talk to him without fear of judgment. The boy revealed that his quirk could hurt others upon touch. Inko soon joined them, her motherly instincts kicking in as she assessed the situation. Izuku had an idea and retrieved a pair of gloves from his school bag, offering them to the boy as a solution. The boy hesitated but eventually put them on, and relief washed over him as he realized he could now interact without causing harm. Tears of joy filled his eyes as he thanked Izuku and hugged him, soaking his shoulder with grateful tears. Afterward, Inko helped the boy get the treatment he needed, and he was taken in by a kind soul named 𝗧𝗓𝗠, who would later be revealed as All Might. Izuku and Tenko remained friends throughout their school years, eventually enrolling in U. Together. Back in the present, Midoriya noticed Tenko seemed lost in thought and checked on him. Tenko chuckled, admitting he had spaced out for a moment. Midoriya expressed concern about his lack of sleep, but Tenko insisted he was fine. Meanwhile, you watched in disbelief as the two friends continued their conversation, feeling ignored. Midoriya expressed his apologies for bothering Tenko, who waved goodbye as they left. You noticed their departure and whispered angrily to herself about Midoriya's charming appearance and impressive physique. Suddenly, she called out to Takayama, who jumped at the sound of her voice. When she turned around, she gasped in surprise upon seeing Ryuko Tatsuma, a blonde hero she admired, and rushed to hug her. Ryuko, at 19 years old and known as the dragon hero Ryukyu, chuckled as she greeted Takayama. She noted that Takayama still struggled to manage the antics of the boys. Takayama sighed, recalling how helpful Ryuko had been in the past before her hero career took off. Curious about her life as a hero, Takayama asked Ryuko how things were going. Ryuko smiled and mentioned that she was on her way to becoming a full-fledged hero. Takayama gasped in excitement, expressing her eagerness to make her own debut in the hero scene, hoping that certain individuals wouldn't cause any trouble. Meanwhile, Midoriya and Tenko were engaged in a spirited game of beach volleyball. Midoriya demonstrated impressive skill, sending the ball soaring past their opponents, leading to their victory. Just then, Tenko heard a familiar voice and turned to see Emi Aoki, a girl with silver hair and violet eyes, wearing a white bikini. He felt a rush of embarrassment and looked away, while Midoriya greeted her cheerfully. Aoki playfully remarked on how they were used to seeing Tenko cooped up in his dorm. Tenko stammered, surprised by her presence, and an awkward silence fell between them until he suddenly checked his watch and rushed away, pulling Midoriya along. As they walked, Midoriya noticed Tenko's unusual behavior around Aoki and speculated about his feelings for her. Tenko, flustered, denied any interest, but Midoriya teased him about it. They exchanged light banter, with Midoriya assuring Tenko that he wouldn't tell anyone about his crush. Tenko regained his composure and made a smug remark about Midoriya being a ladies' man, to which Midoriya protested. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden explosion from a nearby tall building. The two boys looked up in shock as chaos erupted below. Civilians were in panic, and two villains emerged from the wreckage, one thin and dressed in a suit, the other a towering brute. The shorter villain introduced themselves as the Crusher Corps and announced their intention to demonstrate their power. As debris began to fall, a little girl cried out for her parents. Her father rushed to save her, but before he could reach her, a green blur darted in and snatched her away just in time. The dust settled to reveal Midoriya, who held the girl safely in his arms. She looked up at him with admiration as he handed her back to her father, who thanked him and asked if he was a hero. Midoriya, still in his casual attire, introduced himself as a hero in training, using his nickname, Deku. Tenko joined Midoriya, and they both assessed the situation above them. They decided to take action against the villains, with Midoriya encouraging Tenko to put their provisional licenses to use. He handed the little girl his sunglasses, asking her to hold on to them while they dealt with the bad guys. The girl nodded enthusiastically, and as they prepared to confront the threat, they activated their hero outfits, ready to face the challenge ahead. They looked at each other with a smile as Izuku commented on their speed, challenging 𝗀𝐻𝐻 to keep up. With a burst of energy, they dashed up the building. The villain known as 𝗲𝗷 scoffed in frustration, summoning his quirk to create a giant drill construct that he fired at the heroes. The two heroes yelled in unison as they dodged the drill, leaping through the windows. Izuku summoned Black Whip, grabbing onto 𝗀𝐻𝐻 as they swung further up the building. Izuku, with a hint of confidence, asked if 𝗀𝐻𝐻 could handle the drill-wielding villain or if he should take them both on. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 chuckled, determined not to be outdone, and declared that he would take 𝗲𝗷 on himself. He leaped off Izuku and tackled 𝗲𝗷 before he could summon the drill again. Meanwhile, Izuku noticed 𝗀𝐻𝐻 in his ball form causing havoc in the building. If this continued, the structure would be destroyed. He jumped down to where 𝗀𝐻 was wreaking havoc and caught him with his bare hands just before he could hit another pillar. 𝗀𝐻 was stronger than Izuku had anticipated, his feet digging into the ground as he struggled. Izuku knew he needed a boost. With a surge of green electricity, he harnessed his newfound power to stop the wrecking ball villain in his tracks. 𝗀𝐻 was forced to transform back into his normal state, towering over Izuku and grabbing him by the shoulders. Before 𝗀𝐻 could finish his threat, Izuku delivered a swift strike to his chin, sending 𝗀𝐻 crashing to the other side of the building as he tried to regain his balance. Izuku approached calmly, delivering a powerful punch to 𝗀𝐻's gut, causing him to double over. 𝗀𝐻 fell onto Izuku's shoulder, but Izuku quickly followed up with a punch to his face, knocking him unconscious. 𝗀𝐻's body nearly toppled off the building, but Izuku caught him with Black Whip. Sitting on the ledge, he held 𝗀𝐻 up with the quirk, wondering how 𝗀𝐻𝐻 was faring. After 𝗀𝐻𝐻 tackled the drill-wielding villain into the building, 𝗲𝗷 stepped back to create distance. He mockingly questioned 𝗀𝐻𝐻's youth as a hero. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 retorted, pointing out 𝗲𝗷's age and his childish behavior. Angered, 𝗲𝗷 summoned his drill and hurled it at 𝗀𝐻𝐻. Instead of dodging, 𝗀𝐻𝐻 braced himself, gripping the drill head-on with his bare hands. His feet tore through the solid concrete as he held it back, but then he noticed something strange. The drill began to decay. 𝗲𝗷 shouted in disbelief as the drill turned to dust at 𝗀𝐻𝐻's touch. With a smirk, 𝗀𝐻𝐻 put his gloves back on and vanished from 𝗲𝗷's sight. 𝗲𝗷 stuttered in confusion until he felt 𝗀𝐻𝐻 grab his face and slam him into the concrete wall, causing him to spit out blood. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 pulled him out of the wall, delivering a series of rapid punches that left 𝗲𝗷 unconscious with a dent in his cheek. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 hoisted the unconscious villain onto his shoulder and walked out of the building. Izuku and 𝗀𝐻𝐻 emerged to the applause of the civilians, with a police van parked nearby. Ryukyu approached them, thanking the boys for handling the situation while nervously coughing, having just come from the beach. Izuku used Black Whip to pull the two villains into the police van, chuckling as he assured Ryukyu it was no problem. As they prepared to leave, a little girl ran up to Izuku, calling out to him. He knelt down as she handed him his glasses, which made him smile. He asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up, and she shyly replied that she wanted to be a hero to help her parents. Izuku expressed his excitement at the thought of working alongside her as heroes and told her to keep the glasses, saying she had earned them. The girl beamed with admiration as she put them on, even though they were a bit big for her. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 called out to Izuku from a distance, prompting him to hurry over. As he ran, the girl thought to herself about her dream of becoming a hero. Izuku finally removed his hero suit, commenting on how cool the watch was but how tight the outfit felt, especially compared to the real deal. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 chuckled and suggested they head back to the dorms to play some Smash Brothers. Izuku protested, claiming 𝗀𝐻𝐻 always used the same character and move. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 laughed and proposed Mario Kart instead. Excited for what the future held, Izuku and 𝗀𝐻𝐻 looked forward to their next adventure. Chapter name: The Sports Festival starts. Chapter begins. Midoriya was startled when a crumpled piece of paper hit him on the head. Aizawa stood nearby, looking annoyed as he tossed more bits of paper in his direction. Midoriya groaned, acknowledging his teacher's call to get up. He rubbed his head and complained childishly about being disturbed. Aizawa questioned him, noting that he was usually the one scolding others for sleeping on the job. Midoriya explained that he had simply enjoyed a good dream. Aizawa left the room, telling him to meet up later. Midoriya sighed, reflecting on his lack of a proper sleep schedule since his second year at 𝐸. After a significant incident, he pushed those thoughts aside and hurried to catch up with Aizawa as they made their way to the sports festival stadium. Meanwhile, Uraraka was in her room, dressed in the 𝐸 sports festival uniform. She retrieved a pair of sunglasses from a shelf, the same ones Deku had given her when she was just 10 years old. The lenses were cracked, and one of the temples was broken, a result of her insistence on wearing them every time she played hero. She chuckled at the memory of crying to her parents when she realized she had broken them. Just then, she heard a knock on her door. Mina called out, announcing that the festival was about to start. Uraraka quickly placed the glasses down and rushed outside to join her classmates, feeling a surge of determination. She was determined to win the sports festival and make her parents and Deku-sensei proud. In the locker room, everyone was preparing for the event. Mina expressed her disappointment about not being able to wear their hero costumes, while Ojiro pointed out that some students, like Hagekure, would be at a disadvantage. Toru laughed, suggesting that she could simply go without clothes, which earned her some strange looks. Jiro stuttered, questioning if Hagekure was a nudist, even though she was invisible. Bakugo sat on a bench until Todoroki approached him. Bakugo rudely asked what Todoroki wanted, and Todoroki confidently stated that while they were both strong, he believed he would win if they faced each other. Bakugo stood up angrily, challenging Todoroki to a final match, warning him not to get knocked out by anyone else. Todoroki accepted the challenge, and their rivalry deepened. Suddenly, Midoriya-sensei appeared out of nowhere, startling Denki with his sudden entrance. Denki exclaimed for him to stop doing that, while Jiro pointed out that Midoriya had a habit of scaring people. Kirishima reminded Midoriya of the time he had startled Mineta so much that he jumped out of his dorm room window. Midoriya was surprised to hear that, thinking Mineta had simply left. Midoriya then wished everyone luck for the sports festival, confident that they would perform well after all their hard training. He gave them a thumbs up before disappearing from sight, leaving everyone puzzled about his sudden exit. Izuku returned to the teacher's lounge, where he spotted Vlad King. He approached Vlad excitedly, eager to see Class 1B in action. Vlad sighed, acknowledging Midoriya's enthusiasm. He explained that Class 1B had much to prove if they wanted to shine like Class 1A, which was why he had trained them diligently. Present Mike announced the beginning of the festival, encouraging the audience to get excited. The students stepped out of the tunnel and into the stadium, awed by the massive crowd. It was nerve-wracking for every student, regardless of their strength. Present Mike introduced Class 1B, and Midoriya observed them closely, confident that they would give his students a run for their money if they didn't take it seriously. Vlad responded with curiosity about how the competition would unfold. The event was set to include general studies classes, support courses, and business courses, all preparing for an exhilarating day ahead. All of 𝐸's first years were gathered together. Present Mike introduced the other classes, and shortly after, a student was chosen to make a speech. It was Bakugo, who declared his ambition to be number 1. Class 1A cringed, knowing that his bold declaration could damage their already fragile reputation among the other classes, while Midoriya chuckled at the speech, likening it to watching a younger brother trying to act tough. After some commotion, Midnight stepped forward and announced that they would begin right away with the first game, a qualifier. She guided the students to the first event, cracking her WHP on the ground, which made Deku shiver and caused Vlad King to look concerned. What had happened on that date? Meanwhile, 𝐸, watching from the sidelines, muttered under her breath about the troublesome teacher. The first event was an obstacle course. The students took their positions, and as soon as the match started, the ground beneath them froze. Todoroki easily helped stronger classmates like Kirishima and Bakugo break free. As they approached the first stage, they were met with the 0-pointers from the entrance exams, which shocked and terrified many students. Thankfully, Bakugo and Todoroki charged through, allowing the others to pass safely. Next was the fall, where students had to traverse long pillars or risk falling into the dark depths below. Each student used their unique abilities to navigate the challenge, with 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 climbing the ropes and 𝗀𝗱𝗃 skiing across the lines. The final part of the course featured minefields, and everyone had to be cautious not to step on them, except for 𝗀𝗱𝗃, Iida, and 𝐒𝐵𝐲, who boldly charged through. The final lap was a fierce race between 𝗀𝗱𝗃 and 𝗒𝐿𝐻, both neck and neck. 𝗒𝐿𝐻 shouted his determination to win, while 𝗀𝗱𝗃 ignited his flames, propelling himself forward with a burst of speed. He crossed the finish line first, with 𝗒𝐿𝐻 trailing closely behind. Endeavor, watching from the stands, smiled proudly, declaring that 𝗀𝗱 had embraced his true self and the power that would surpass even him. 𝗀𝗱, however, only scoffed at his father's loud proclamations. He had not run for his father's approval but for himself, remembering Deku's teachings about embracing his true identity. As 𝗒𝐿𝐻 stormed up to 𝗀𝗱𝗃, he declared that he would be the king of the festival, pointing a thumb at himself. After everyone finished, the next event was announced, the cavalry battle. Students formed teams of 2 to 4, receiving headbands with points based on their race placements. Unfortunately for 𝗀𝗱𝗃, he ended up with the coveted 10 million points, placing a significant target on his back. Midoriya pondered how 𝗀𝗱𝗃 and the class would handle this situation. Would 𝗀𝗱's closest friends band together or distance themselves out of fear? Meanwhile, the heroes and staff were conversing, and Endeavor approached Deku to express his gratitude for helping 𝗀𝗱 change his mindset. Midoriya responded with a smirk, acknowledging that he had not done it for Endeavor's approval but rather to help 𝗀𝗱 break free from his father's shadow. This only fueled Endeavor's anger, and he retorted that he was guiding his son on the right path. Deku, unfazed, challenged Endeavor's perspective, leading to a tense moment where he used his black WHP to emphasize his point. He apologized for the damage to the wall before walking away, leaving the heroes in shock. Endeavor regained his composure, recognizing that beneath Deku's youthful exterior lay immense power. As the students regrouped to form their teams, the match began. Team 1 consisted of Shoto Todoroki, Momo Yaoyorozu, Mei Hatsum, and Denki Kaminari. Team 2 included Ochako Uraraka, Hitoshi Shinso, Tenya Iida, and Fumikage Tokoyami. Team 3 was made up of Katsuki Bakugo, Eijiro Kirishima, Hanta-Siro, and Mina Ishido. Team 4 featured Minoru Mineta, Mizo Shoji, and Tsuyu Azui. Team 5 included Toru Hagakure, Kyoka Jiro, Rikido Sato, and Koji Koda. Team 6 had Nito Minoma, Kozai Tsuburaba, Senkai, and Shinhei Kuwaro. Team 7 was composed of Masahiro Ojiro, Pony Tsunatori, Nairenjiki Shoda, and Yuga Oyama. Team 8 included Itsuka Kendo, Reiko Yanagi, Setsuna Tokage, and Kinoko Komori. Team 9 consisted of Yui Kodai, Kojiro Bando, and Manga Fukudashi. Finally, Team 10 had Toguro Kamakiri, Hiryu Rin, and Juroda Shishida. This would surely be an interesting and chaotic match, Izuku thought to himself as the competition commenced. In 2009, in a dimly lit room, All Might, Present Mic, Aizawa, and Principal Nizu entered in suits and took their seats before a group of government officials. Normally, discussions of this nature would be reserved for the hero staff, but the gravity of the situation warranted the presence of higher-ups. One of the board members inquired about the purpose of the meeting. All Might responded, his usual optimism replaced by a palpable sense of dread, as he recalled the devastation caused by All for One. The board member confirmed their intention to send a team of heroes to raid All for One's base and finally put an end to his reign of terror, which shocked several heroes in the room. All Might interjected, insisting that he should go alone, not wanting to risk any hero's life for his cause. The board member explained that while they believed in All Might's strength, they could not ignore the possibility of other villains joining forces against him. Another executive chimed in, mentioning that they had already enlisted Kamui Woods, Endeavor, Mirko, Gang Orca, and others for the mission. Aizawa then pointed out Izuku Midoriya, a second-year student who had recently obtained his provisional license and possessed exceptional power. The head executive acknowledged Midoriya's potential, which caused All Might to gulp. he was reluctant to involve Midoriya in such a dangerous situation, but he could not deny the young hero's strength. All Might admitted that Midoriya's growth over the past year at 𝐻𝐻𝐸 was remarkable, having trained and sparred with him multiple times. He even suggested that Midoriya might be stronger than himself, shocking many in the room. Present Mike expressed disbelief, questioning how a second-year student could surpass All Might's level. Aizawa noted that Midoriya's growth seemed limitless, raising concerns about whether he had any limits at all. The discussion shifted to the inclusion of support heroes, with Present Mike suggesting Best Jeanist and Emi Aoki from Class 2A, who had proven to be reliable in battle and as a healer. All Might then proposed 𝗀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, the second strongest in the class and a good partner for Midoriya. Whispers circulated among the board members before the main executive responded, acknowledging 𝗀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 but expressing concerns about his quirk and control, particularly regarding his past. All Might, who had taken on a fatherly role for 𝗀𝐻𝐭, defended him passionately, arguing that 𝗀𝐻𝐭 had changed and undergone special training. Aizawa supported All Might's stance, emphasizing that 𝗀𝐻𝐭 had mastered his quirk and worked well with Midoriya in their hero training. The board members were visibly surprised by the strong support for 𝗀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 from both the #1 hero and the underground teacher of Class 2A. The main executive concluded that they would consider 𝗀𝐻𝐭 for the mission, a promising sign as the meeting drew to a close. However, the real challenge lay ahead for the heroes as they prepared to confront the formidable All for One. As All Might exited the conference room, he looked up at the sky, silently encouraging 𝗀𝐻𝐭 to believe in himself and strive to become one of the greatest heroes, making Nana proud. Meanwhile, Izuku Midoriya and 𝗀𝐻𝐭 were hanging out in the park, feeling bored. 𝗀𝐻𝐭 expressed his frustration, while Midoriya agreed that nothing exciting was happening. When 𝗀𝐻𝐭 suggested watching a movie, Midoriya jokingly mentioned Dragon Ball Evolution, which 𝗀𝐻𝐭 vehemently rejected. Just then, Yu walked by, and Midoriya's face lit up as he waved to her. Yu, still slightly annoyed by a previous incident, inquired about their boredom. 𝗀𝐻𝐭 lamented their lack of activities, and Midoriya proposed hanging out together. Yu sighed but eventually agreed, and the three of them set off into town, eventually arriving at an arcade. Midoriya's excitement grew as they reminisced about their past visits, filled with competitive games and friendly bets. One memorable instance involved Takayama challenging 𝗀𝐻𝐭 to a fighting game, leading to a hilarious outcome where 𝗀𝐻𝐭 ended up carrying shopping bags for what felt like an eternity. As they approached a set of dance machines at the back of the arcade, Yu playfully challenged Midoriya to a dance battle, her eyes sparkling with determination. She was determined to win the game as payback for getting hit with the ball at the beach. Although 𝗀𝐻𝐭 tried to explain that it was an accident, she remained annoyed. She insisted that payback was necessary for hitting her face and breaking her sunglasses. Yu teased Midoriya, questioning whether the strongest student at 𝐻𝐻𝐸 would back down from a challenge posed by a girl. With a grin, Midoriya accepted the challenge, ready to prove himself. As he approached the dance machine, he tossed aside his blazer and stretched, preparing for the dance battle against Yu. The competition began, and after some time, Izuku found himself breathing and struggling to hold onto the bars, utterly exhausted from the intense dancing. Meanwhile, Yu continued to dance effortlessly, leaving 𝗀𝐻𝐭 in shock. Despite his efforts, Midoriya fell to the floor, conceding defeat. Yu smirked in victory, playfully placing her foot on his stomach and declaring herself the #1 hero, basking in her triumph. 𝗀𝐻𝐭 thought to himself that perhaps she was enjoying this a bit too much. Midoriya found himself giving her back rubs for the rest of the day. Later, Class 2A returned to their usual routine at 𝐻𝐻𝐸, settling back into their classes after a short break. Aizawa, as bored as ever, welcomed them back, though he noted a few exceptions while looking at Midoriya and 𝗀𝐭, who waved at him cheerfully. Midoriya and 𝗀𝐻𝐭 had earned the reputation of trouble students due to their antics, but thankfully, Yu kept them somewhat in check, even if she could be a handful herself. Aoki, on the other hand, seemed to be 𝗀𝐻𝐭's weakness, as his crush on her was evident to everyone, including the janitor. Aizawa instructed the students to change into their hero costumes for morning training, but he stopped Midoriya, 𝗀𝐭, and Aoki before they could leave their seats. He asked them to follow him, leading them to Principal Nizu's office. Izawa knocked on the door and waited a moment before allowing them to enter while he remained outside. Nizu greeted them warmly, acknowledging their status as star students. Tenko asked why they were there, and Midoriya speculated about their previous encounter with the Crusher Corps. Nizu praised their performance in that battle but quickly shifted to the real reason for their visit. He informed them that they had tracked down a major villain known as All for One. The mention of that name sent shivers down Izuku and Tenko's spines, as they were all too familiar with it, while Aoki looked confused. Nizu explained that All for One was a powerful villain with the ability to steal quirks. He then revealed that they had nominated the three of them to assist in a raid against this villain, emphasizing that their combined strength and support would be crucial for success. He highlighted Midoriya's power, Tenko's trained quirk, and Aoki's healing abilities, explaining why they were specifically chosen for this mission. With determination, Midoriya declared his commitment to performing his role as a hero to the best of his abilities. Tenko, not wanting to be left behind, eagerly agreed to join him. Aoki, motivated by the thought of saving lives, also accepted the challenge, feeling a strong sense of responsibility. As the school day came to an end, everyone returned to the dorms to enjoy their free time, except for Midoriya, who stood outside, gazing at the darkening sky. Tenko approached him, offering a bottle of water for both of them. Midoriya thanked him and shared his thoughts about the upcoming mission with All for One, expressing his hopes and concerns after training for 2 years. Tenko acknowledged the gravity of the situation, recalling that All Might had once considered making him his successor but was grateful that he had chosen Midoriya instead. Midoriya chuckled at the compliment, returning the praise by calling Tenko cool, noting that they were among the strongest in their class, with a friendly rivalry between them. Tenko remarked on how far Izuku had come from his stuttering days at Aldra. Izuku chuckled and shrugged, attributing his honesty to his mother's upbringing. He took a sip from his can and teased Tenko about his own past, recalling how he had been the quiet kid who played on his Game Boy Advance at the back of the class. Tenko defended himself, insisting that he was focused on grinding through Pokemon Ruby, which he found far more engaging than any math lesson. Tenko then placed a reassuring hand on Izuku's shoulder, suggesting they shift their focus away from the looming threat of All for One. He proposed they play some Mario Kart, confident that they could overcome any challenges together. Izuku looked up at the sky one last time before agreeing, and they headed back inside the dorms. Together, they felt capable of facing any threat that might come their way. Even as teenagers, Izuku had grown incredibly strong, and Tenko had also experienced a significant increase in his own abilities compared to his former self. The story would continue to weave in flashbacks, occasionally interrupted by events at the sports festival, until their past was fully explored. The next chapter was expected to be released sooner than the last few, leaving readers with more art featuring Izuku, Tenko, and Yu. Chapter name: The Sports Festival continues. The Caverly race had finally arrived after many minutes of anticipation and preparation, with Midoriya staring down at the students alongside their teams. Present Mike shouted for everyone to begin, and midnight announced the start of the event. All teams launched into action, each with a target in mind. Team Todoroki, who held the coveted 10 billion point bandana wrapped around Todoroki's head. Todoroki instructed his teammates to hold on as he activated the jetpack Mei had equipped him with before the battle. Momo and Denki, wearing heavy metal boots, were lifted high into the air as they glided across the arena. Todoroki nodded to Yaoyorozu, who quickly created binoculars for him to assess the situation in the arena. As they descended back to the ground, they were suddenly ambushed from all sides by a flurry of purple ball. Kaminari gasped in shock at the sight before him. They soon spotted Shoji approaching, carrying Tsu and Mineta. Mineta proudly declared his presence, while Tsu extended her tongue in an attempt to snatch the bandana from Todoroki. Team Todoroki struggled to move, realizing they were stuck in the ball. In a moment of panic, Todoroki activated the jetpack again, lifting into the air but damaging the bottom of Momo's metal shoe. Mei noted to herself that it was something she needed to fix in the next version. From a distance, Bakugo's team watched as Todoroki and his team took flight. Bakugo shouted in determination, using his explosions to propel himself into the air, leaving his teammates behind. He prepared an explosion in his hand, prompting Todoroki to create an ice shield around his arm for protection. The blast sent Todoroki and his team flying back, and Bakugo found himself falling until 𝗧𝗧𝗧 caught him with his tape. 𝗧𝗧𝗧 chuckled, teasing Bakugo about his reckless move. Bakugo growled in frustration, insisting that he and Todoroki were not finished yet. Suddenly, a blonde blur snatched Bakugo's headband, revealing it to be Monoma from Class 1B. He taunted them, waving the wristband in the air. Bakugo, now furious, declared a change of plans and directed his team towards Monoma and the 1B students. Present Mike announced that everyone was targeting the holder of the 3 million points, questioning whether they could withstand the onslaught. Meanwhile, Izuku and Yu watched the broadcast on television when Vlad King entered with 3 cups of tea. Yu accepted her cup gracefully, while Midoriya thanked Vlad, who seemed slightly uncomfortable with the nickname Vladdy. Midoriya took a sip of his tea, only to find it too hot, causing him to cringe back. Yu chuckled at his reaction as Vlad sat down next to them. Vlad observed the screen, noting Kaminari's lightning bolt being deflected by Tokoyami's dark shadow. He complimented Midoriya on how well his students were performing, especially in helping Todoroki come out of his shell. Midoriya shrugged, acknowledging that Todoroki had been stubborn at first but had improved significantly after the USJ incident. Vlad mentioned how strange it was that the attackers had known when and where the students would be. He speculated whether someone had hacked Yu systems or if there was a traitor among them. Midoriya chuckled, finding the idea amusing. Yu, concerned, questioned Midoriya's lack of worry, suggesting that a traitor could be someone close to him. Midoriya dismissed the notion, insisting that Yu was too honorable to be a traitor. In a playful response, Yu threw her cup of tea at him, but the liquid vanished as it approached, evaporating into the air due to Midoriya's electric barrier. Midoriya smiled at the unexpected turn of events, while Yu crossed her arms in frustration, feeling she had missed her chance. Vlad, puzzled, asked how Midoriya's quirk worked in such a way. Midoriya explained that it was quite simple, referencing the small electric sparks he created when activating his quirk. Izuku had trained his danger sense ability and his body to work in harmony. Whenever his danger sense detected a threat, his body subconsciously created an electric barrier to protect him. He shifted the focus back to the students, drawing attention to Monoma, who was currently engaged in a fierce competition with Bakugo. Monoma unleashed an explosion that caught the angry blonde off guard, prompting a chuckle from Midoriya. He noted how the students were putting up a good fight, especially the boy with the copy quirk. Midoriya wondered if Monoma could copy one for all, but quickly dismissed the thought, realizing the catastrophic consequences that would follow. Meanwhile, Todoroki's team had managed to lay low for a while. Momo suggested they wait out the time until they heard the revving of engines. Todoroki turned to see Team Uraraka, with Ida revving his engines. Ida asked if they were ready to roll, and Ochako responded with enthusiasm. Mere seconds later, Team Uraraka surged forward, but Todoroki quickly created a wall of ice to shield himself. However, Ida's sheer speed shattered the ice, allowing Todoroki's team to narrowly dodge the attack. Todoroki scoffed at their attempt, insisting they wouldn't give up easily. Suddenly, ― commanded him to freeze, and Todoroki found himself immobilized, much to the shock of their friends. As Uraraka reached out to grab the headband, she was unexpectedly struck by a metal staff, which also knocked Todoroki out of ―'s control. In response, Todoroki created a ring of fire in front of Team Uraraka, frustrated that they were so close to victory. ― asked Ida if he had any energy left, but Ida admitted he was out of juice for the rest of the battle. Tokoyami suggested a different approach, but before they could strategize further, Present Mike announced that Team Todoroki had maintained their lead, leaving Team Uraraka feeling defeated. Bakugo jumped off his teammates, stepping on ―'s head as he landed, causing ― to yelp in surprise. Bakugo expressed his frustration at failing to defeat Todoroki once again. ― commented that at least they weren't too upset, and Ida looked away, his glasses fogging up as he concealed his feelings. Meanwhile, Todoroki wondered where Momo had gone, recalling that she had been with the team just moments ago. Meanwhile, the girls from Class 1A emerged from the changing rooms, wearing cheerleading uniforms. Mina questioned whether they were supposed to wear those outfits, but Momo reassured her that it was a tradition. Just then, they spotted Midoriya, who seemed surprised by their attire. Momo explained that the uniforms were part of the sports festival event, which Kaminari and Mineta had mentioned. Midoriya chuckled, warning them not to trust those two with such an unusual idea, especially given their mischievous tendencies. The girls realized the implications of their outfits, and embarrassment washed over them. Jiro expressed her disbelief at falling for the trick, while Momo sank to her knees in humiliation, comforted by Uraraka. Jiro vowed to confront Kaminari and Mineta for their prank, ready to take action. Midoriya, with a smirk, proposed a plan to the girls, asking if Momo had enough energy left to create a male-sized cheerleading uniform. Denki laughed in anticipation, thrilled that the girls had fallen for the prank. He couldn't help but admire how great they looked in their uniforms. As they heard footsteps coming from the changing rooms, excitement filled the air as they awaited the reveal. Suddenly, Deku burst out, not in his hero costume but in a cheerleading uniform tailored to his size by Momo. Kaminari and Mineta were left in shock, their expressions reflecting disbelief at the sight. Mount Lady, watching from the sidelines, spat out her drink in surprise. Aizawa face-bombed at his former student's antics, while Present Mike announced the unexpected scene to everyone, trying to maintain his composure. Bakugo looked on in disgust, and Todoroki turned away, cringing at the spectacle. Despite the chaos, the girls rallied together, ready to cheer on Class 1. Midoriya leaped into the air, energizing the stadium as the girls emerged from the tunnel. Some, like Toru and Uraraka, donned cheerleading uniforms and joined him, while others, like Momo and Jiro, put on their P uniforms. Despite her reluctance, Jiro felt grateful for Midoriya's efforts to draw attention away from them and seek payback against the boys. She approached Kaminari and playfully slapped him with her cords, causing him to yelp in surprise. 𝗀𝐿 walked up to Uraraka, a hint of embarrassment on his face. He remarked on her presence since the end of the event, still processing everything. Uraraka chuckled, explaining that Kaminari and Mineta had initially tricked her, but Midoriya's charisma had drawn her in. Mina wrapped her arms around the two, teasing them about their flustered expressions, while Deku and Toru danced carefree in the background. Present Mike announced the next segment of the sports festival, capturing everyone's attention. He explained that the final event would be a one-on-one fighting tournament, where opponents would face off in multiple rounds until only one remained. The contestants were soon revealed. 𝗀𝐿 faced off against Nito Monoma, who wore a smug grin. 𝗀𝐿 expressed his distaste for Monoma's presence, while Nito taunted him about being afraid of competition. Next, Shoto Todoroki was set to battle Hanada-Siro, who reacted with disbelief at the matchup, feeling it was unfair. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 challenged Denki Kaminari, confidently asserting his skills, which caught Denki off guard. Mei Hatsum was eager to test her inventions against Tenya Ida, who adjusted his glasses in preparation. Mina Ishido declared her determination to defeat Yuga Aoyama, who confidently held a rose, claiming she would tremble before his twinkling. Momo Yaoyorozu faced Fumikage Tokoyami, acknowledging his strength but vowing to give her best effort, earning a respectful nod from him. Sen Kaibara encouraged Eijiro Kirishima, acknowledging Monoma's negative reputation but urging everyone to do their best. Kirishima appreciated the support, joking about Bakugo's demeanor. When Ochako Uraraka mentioned Katsuki Bakugo, he seemed confused, leaving her stunned, as they had fought against each other in training. Midoriya looked down at the crowd with a smile, feeling grateful to be back in his hero suit. He admired his classmates' determination to overcome their opponents and prove themselves. The excitement of the sports festival was building, and the next chapter promised to revisit the past for a final flashback. Chapter name: Flashback Arc Chapter 3. Last breath. In 2008, a tense atmosphere enveloped you. That morning, filled with a sense of dread and uncertainty as three individuals stepped out of the gates. Izuku Midoriya, the green-haired star student of U, and the 9th user of One for All, walked alongside Tenko Shimura, the grandson of the 7th and 2nd strongest U student, and Emi Aoki, the battle medic protege of Recovery Girl. Izuku nervously gripped his scarf and asked if everyone had everything they needed. Tenko adjusted his gloves and confirmed they were ready, while Aoki mentioned she had packed any necessary medical equipment. The trio finally reached a black limousine, sent by Endeavor's agency for their special mission. The car ride was tense, with little of the usual banter between Midoriya and Tenko or Tenko's shy glances at Aoki. The silence persisted until they arrived at the Hero Public Safety Commission. Exiting the vehicle, they navigated through the bustling building until they reached a room filled with the best heroes of various powers and sizes. Familiar faces like Endeavor, Best Jeanist, Kamui Woods, Sir Night-Eye, Eraserhead, Ryukyu, and, of course, the #1 hero and symbol of peace, All Might, greeted them. All Might expressed his happiness at seeing his star students, while Endeavor scoffed, remarking that it was about time they arrived. Ryukyu approached Aoki and playfully ruffled her hair, assuring her that she would do well. However, Endeavor quickly interrupted, reminding everyone that they had a villain to confront. Aizawa supported Endeavor's sentiment, prompting the teens to focus on the task at hand. The room darkened as Sir Night-Eye stepped forward, moving a whiteboard into view. He revealed the location of All for One's base of operations, a place that blended seamlessly into its surroundings. Night-Eye proposed a blitzkrieg maneuver, with All Might leading the charge while the other heroes dealt with All for One's minions. He suggested that All Might confront All for One alone, with Izuku providing support. Night-Eye explained that teams would be essential, as All for One was likely to have a large army with diverse powers. He displayed a graph outlining the different teams. Team All Might consisted of All Might and Izuku, while Team Endeavor included Endeavor and Ryukyu. Team Entropy featured Tenko and Emi, and Team Night-Eye included Sir Night-Eye, Kamui Woods, and Eraserhead, among others. Aoki smiled at Tenko, excited about their partnership, while Tenko felt a mix of nervousness and determination to protect her, knowing her role as the healer was crucial. As preparations concluded, Night-Eye announced that the raid would begin that night. The heroes geared up for the impending confrontation. Meanwhile, 2 villains stood guard at the door, expecting another uneventful night on watch duty. Suddenly, they heard a knock. One guard questioned who it was, while the other pressed his ear against the door, unsure of what to expect. A mysterious voice called out, asking if someone had ordered a pizza. The guards exchanged confused glances, unsure if anyone had made such an order. One villain smirked, suggesting they just take the pizza, as villains often do. However, before he could finish his sentence, the wall exploded as All Might burst through, shouting his signature battle cry. The rest of the heroes charged in behind him, ready to confront the villains. The villains shouted their battle cry as they readied their quirks and weapons against the incoming wave of heroes charging into the base. Eraserhead dashed forward at a villain with drill hands. The villain noticed and attempted to slash at the underground hero, but Aizawa easily dodged the predictable move. He activated his erasure quirk, stopping the drill hands from spinning. While he couldn't completely erase a physical quirk, this would suffice. He then ensnared the villain in his scarf and hurled them into a wall, knocking them out cold. Aizawa stood up just in time to narrowly avoid a blade attached to a chain that was thrown in his direction, the weapon shattering the wall behind him. Emerging from the shadows was a villain with long purple hair and a black eye mask, who taunted him, expressing disappointment at missing his target. Aizawa muttered under his breath as he assumed a fighting stance, while the purple-clad villain smirked, declaring they weren't finished yet. They yanked the chain back and the blade nearly struck Aizawa, but he anticipated the trick and seized the blade before it could reach him. The villain protested, pulling with all their might, but Aizawa scowled. He declared that if they wanted him so badly, he would show them his strength. Grabbing the chain, he pulled it back, catching the villain off guard and yanking them toward him. When they reached him, he delivered a swift punch to their face, rendering them unconscious. Aizawa scoffed at the antics of the younger generation as Present Mike and Night-Eye arrived. He inquired about their delay, feeling slightly annoyed since teamwork was part of the plan. Present Mike chuckled lightly, half-jokingly apologizing for getting caught up along the way. Night-Eye, ever vigilant, reminded them to stay alert, as they had no idea how many villains All For One had waiting for them. Meanwhile, All Might and Izuku were navigating through the villain's base, defeating foes as they searched for All For One. They eventually stumbled upon a plain wooden door at the end of the hallway. Both heroes felt a sense of foreboding as All Might stepped forward and opened the door. Inside, they found a surprisingly normal room, decorated with old-fashioned wallpaper and furniture. An antique gramophone played a nostalgic tune while All For One sat in a fancy chair, dressed in a suit. He greeted them with a bored tone, mentioning how he had been waiting for them and had entertained himself with music from his youth, though he also enjoyed modern artists like Kanye. All Might and Izuku circled him like predators, determined to confront their foe. All Might declared that this confrontation would end today. All For One responded sarcastically, noting that he had heard similar declarations before. Izuku chimed in, emphasizing that this time, they were united. All For One acknowledged their partnership, expressing annoyance at their combined strength and taunting All Might about his past losses. Suddenly, memories of Nana and her tragic fate at All For One's hands flooded All Might's mind, igniting his fury. He lost his patience and charged at All For One, delivering a powerful punch that nearly obliterated the room, catching Izuku off guard due to his danger sense. When the dust settled, All Might's fist was embedded in the chair where All For One had been sitting, but the villain had vanished. The sound of slow clapping echoed from above as All For One floated in the air. He mocked All Might, suggesting that perhaps he could follow in the footsteps of his mentor and leave Izuku without guidance. Both heroes exchanged worried glances as they powered up to face this formidable threat. All For One noted Izuku's impressive growth and how he could utilize the quirks of previous users, hinting at a similarity between them. Izuku vehemently denied any connection to the villain, intensifying his power. All For One chuckled, suggesting they stop talking and engage in battle. In an instant, All Might and Izuku charged at him with incredible speed, surprising even the villain momentarily. However, All For One managed to catch both of their fists just in time. He was then pushed back by a powerful kick from Izuku, and before he could recover, All Might struck him in the face. All For One absorbed the blow to charge his other hand with strength-enhancing quirks, delivering a gut punch to All Might that caused him to spit BLD. Seizing the opportunity, All For One grabbed All Might's head and slammed his knee into him, sending the hero crashing to the ground. Regaining his composure, All For One adjusted his tie and dusted off his suit. Suddenly, a smokescreen enveloped the area, and a blur of lightning zoomed past him, knocking him off his feet. It was Izuku. All For One struggled to track his movements as he fell through the air. In mere moments, Izuku dashed up the wall and leaped into the sky, harnessing the power of One For All. He descended with a devastating smash aimed at All For One, breaking through any defenses the villain attempted to raise. Using the recoil, Izuku launched himself into the air again, delivering a series of rapid blows before finishing with a powerful kick to All For One's face, sending him crashing into multiple buildings. As All For One emerged from the rubble, he wiped the BLD from his face and began to laugh, clearly impressed by the display of power. I now understand what All Might saw in you. Among all the One For All users who have faced me over the century, no one has wielded my brother's quirk better than you. I, All For One, declare you the strongest. He laughed, amazed that a young boy could so easily surpass his predecessors in such a short time. However, Midoriya did not look amused in the slightest. But I'm not done, child. Not in the slightest. I will prove that you are all beneath me. He activated all his strength and power enhancers, his arms bulking up. Izuku got into a fighting stance, preparing for the worst, but All Might stepped forward, stretching as he faced the villain before them. You're not alone, young Midoriya. We'll finish this together. He took a fighting stance alongside Midoriya, which made the green-haired boy smile. Electricity surrounded him, more potent than ever. The raid was chaotic, with heroes and villains alike battling using their unique quirks, making it nearly impossible to comprehend for anyone. Emi Aoki tried her best to be a team player, risking her life to tend to people's wounds. She rushed across the destruction-riddled battleground when suddenly, a villain with a sledgehammer shouted at her, ready to swing. Aoki gasped in surprise and fell, but Tenko swooped in, elbowing the villain in the face and knocking him away. He quickly grabbed the villain and threw him into a wall before rushing to Aoki. "Emi, are you okay? You're not hurt, are you?" he asked, looking for any signs of damage. "I'm fine, Tenko, I promise. There are heroes who need my help still," she insisted, getting up determined to assist others like a true hero. "I'll follow you just in case," Tenko said, holding onto her hand, a slight blush on his cheeks. Aoki smiled before they walked through the ruins of the King of Villains base. "Have you heard of the water hose duo?" "I haven't seen them since we came in here," Aoki asked as they walked. "Can't say I have, to be honest," Tenko replied. Suddenly, they felt the earth beneath them shake, cracks appearing in the floor, and massive sinkholes forming around them. What was that?" Aoki exclaimed, shocked. "It must be Izuku and All Might fighting all for one," Tenko said, gulping as he saw walls and floors around them break from the proximity of the fight. Aoki swore she could hear something other than the earthquakes. "Sounds like someone bashing something." They turned the corner and gasped in horror at the sight of a villain in a red tank top and bulging muscles, standing over the fallen bodies of the water hose duo. "Gah, they got a lucky hit on me," the villain said, covering his bleeding eye. Tenko stood in shock. "Why, you killed them?" The villain chuckled. "So, what is it to you? What are you going to do about it?" Tenko felt a sweat drop down his forehead. "Retrieve their bodies while I fight this monster," he said angrily. Aoki nodded as Tenko dashed in to attack. The villain smirked at the audacity of the hero to dare attack him. He activated his quirk and smashed the floor beneath him, causing a small shockwave that Tenko dodged just in time. He landed a kick on the villain's neck, but the villain didn't budge. Come on. That can't be all." The villain taunted, gripping Tenko's leg and squeezing it hard, causing Tenko to cry out in pain before the villain threw him into a wall, which broke upon impact. The villain chuckled as he walked up to Tenko slowly. "What's the matter? Are you really all talk and no bite? Well, I suppose I should take you out of your misery." Muscle mass gathered around his fist as he prepared to finish off Tenko with one punch. Suddenly, Tenko stopped the punch with both hands. The villain said, surprised at Tenko's sudden strength. "I get it. Your quirk enhances your muscles and gives you a stat increase. That means, if you're careful, I can let loose," Tenko said, his red eyes glowing as the muscle around the villain's arms began to decay. "Grr." The villain pulled back, trying to stop the spread of decay over his hand. Quickly thinking, he grabbed a large broken piece of metal and used it to cut off the decaying muscle, halting the spread. Breathing, he knelt on the floor, recovering from the pain and dread of nearly being turned to dust. "For someone who seems to love the thrill of taking lives, you seem rather afraid to die," Tenko said, looking down at the villain with anger as he clenched his fist and struck him across the face, sending him rolling in the dirt. "Gah!" Tenko fell to his knees, gripping his leg. The villain got up, wiping his face, seeing a small trickle of blood. "You know what? You're right. No more holding back on me, hero," he declared as he massively buffed up and charged at Tenko. Tenko grunted as he slammed his hands into the ground, sending a wave of decay, but the villain only smirked, using his superior speed and agility to dodge. He caught Tenko by surprise, delivering a powerful punch to the gut that made Tenko cough. Tenko tried to grip the villain's arm, enacting decay, but the villain laughed as he grabbed Tenko's head, intending to crush it. "I wonder what will happen first, my arm decaying or your skull crushing. I have my bets on the latter." He smirked, squeezing harder until a bright light suddenly blinded him. Distracted, he let go of Tenko to guard his eyes. Before Tenko could hit the ground, a mysterious figure grabbed him and rushed him out of there. "Tenko, are you there?" A quiet voice whispered to him. His eyes slowly opened to see Aoki looking over him, tears in her eyes. As he regained consciousness, he noticed their surroundings. They were behind a broken wall, and Aoki was healing his injuries. Tenko tried to stand up but felt pain in his stomach and fell back down. "Hey, be careful." Aoki focused on healing Tenko, her determination evident. Tenko, weary and confused, looked up at her and asked what had happened. Aoki explained that he had been on the brink of death due to a monstrous foe, and she couldn't just stand by. Her instincts had kicked in, prompting her to use a flashbang to facilitate their escape. Grateful, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 expressed his appreciation, feeling a light blush creep onto his cheeks, which also made Aoki blush slightly. She reassured him that it was all part of her duty. Suddenly, they heard heavy footsteps approaching, unmistakably belonging to Muscular, who was intent on finishing what he had started. He taunted them, making his presence known with booming stomps. Aoki held her breath, placing her hand over 𝗀𝐻𝐿's to keep him calm. Muscular circled the area, taunting them further, and then suddenly slammed his fist through the wall where they were hiding. In a moment of instinct, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 grabbed Aoki and dashed away, only to halt abruptly at the sight of a massive sinkhole ahead. Despite his weakened state, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 positioned himself protectively in front of Aoki as Muscular approached, laughing menacingly. Muscular relished the moment, declaring that there were no more places to hide. 𝗀𝐻𝐿, fueled by adrenaline and a fierce longing to protect Aoki, took a fighting stance, ready to confront the threat. Muscular charged at him, but 𝗀𝐻𝐿 dug his feet into the ground, bracing himself against the oncoming force. A struggle ensued, with 𝗀𝐻𝐿 pushing against Muscular's overwhelming strength while Aoki clung to him for support. 𝗀𝐻𝐿's quirk began to manifest, visibly affecting Muscular, but the outcome remained uncertain. Muscular boasted about his apparent advantage, but 𝗀𝐻𝐿 gritted his teeth, determined not to give in. As the decay spread up Muscular's arm, shock crossed the villain's face, realizing he could no longer halt its progression. In a surge of newfound power, 𝗀𝐻𝐿's hair transformed from dark to a striking white as he shouted for Muscular to silence himself. With a powerful roar, Muscular's arms disintegrated into dust, and he fell to the ground, overwhelmed by pain. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 had awakened his quirk, emerging victorious over Muscular. However, the ground beneath them crumbled, causing Aoki to lose her footing. In a panic, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 turned to reach for Aoki, extending his hand just in time to grasp hers. But in his haste, he inadvertently activated his quirk, and horror struck him as he watched Aoki turn to dust, her final moments filled with a serene smile that seemed to forgive him. Overcome with guilt, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 fell to his knees, sickened by his unintentional actions. Muscular, now reduced to a mere shell of himself, chuckled weakly, taunting 𝗀𝐻𝐿 about his loss. Before he could finish his sentence, 𝗀𝐻𝐿, fueled by rage and sorrow, swiftly ended Muscular's life, refusing to let him die from decay. Despite his hatred for Muscular, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 couldn't shake the feeling that he had become no better than a villain himself. The legendary battle between the three strongest individuals on the planet reached its climax. They stood amidst the wreckage, their clothing torn and bodies battered, breathing from exhaustion. All for One, towering over them, remarked on their persistence. All Might, despite his weakened state, declared his resolve to fight until his last breath to defeat him. All for One, gathering yellow energy in his hand, unleashed a barrage of light beams at the heroes. They dodged the initial blasts, only to discover that the beams twisted and followed their movements. Midoriya warned All Might to be cautious, narrowly avoiding the deadly light as All for One continued to unleash his relentless attacks. All for One chuckled, taunting the two heroes. Deku maneuvered around the tracking lasers with quick precision, thanks to his danger sense and ability to fly, making it easier for him compared to All Might. Suddenly, a sharp pain struck Izuku's head, causing him to cringe and halt midair. The beams of light collided, sending him crashing to the ground, creating a crater. Young Midoriya! All Might shouted in concern as he dodged the lasers. He quickly jumped back and clapped his hands, creating a shockwave that destroyed the light beams. I'm coming, young Midoriya, he called out, attempting to leap toward Izuku, but All for One slammed him into a wall, pinning him down. Nah, I don't think so, the villain said, pressing All Might's head against the wall. Meanwhile, Deku struggled to rise, blood trickling down his forehead. What happened? He murmured to himself, until he was suddenly pulled into his consciousness, where the souls of the previous One for All users gathered. And no, it can't be. The soul of the seventh user, 𝗀𝐻𝐿, gasped. Nana, what's going on? Deku cried, clutching his head as he tried to comprehend the situation. It's 𝗀𝐻𝐿. Something's wrong. It's like he's shattered. Maybe he's gone, Nana said, collapsing to her knees as painful images of Tenko flooded their minds, leaving the others in shock. They could only assume the worst. Tenko was dead, and if he was gone, then Emi was too. Izuku snapped back to reality, shouting at All for One, demanding to know what he had done to Tenko. All for One chuckled, slamming All Might into the ground. "Oh, to that Shimura boy. Let's see," he said, activating his search quirk. It looks like there is no trace of that boy in this radius. Guess one of my men must have taken care of him." His voice held a hint of irritation, as if he needed Tenko for something. "Oh well, I guess I should start wrapping things up," he added, raising his hand as a wave of energy surged toward Deku, who was still recovering from the last attack, grappling with the loss of his best friend. Young Midoriya. All Might leaped in front of him, taking the brunt of the attack. A large mark appeared on his back, and the ripple effect struck Deku as well, though he was in better shape. "I knew you would do something like that, so I added a little ripple to it," All for One said, crossing his arms and watching them suffer. "Oh my, what?" Deku cried through the pain. All Might chuckled softly. "Well, my legs sort of moved on their own. I guess you're rubbing off on me more every day." He coughed, blood spilling from his mouth. "You're this world's last hope, young Midoriya. I have my full trust in you." With that, All Might fell unconscious beside Deku. The supposed death of Tenko, Emi, and now potentially All Might weighed heavily on Izuku. He looked down at the pool of blood beneath him, his reflection staring back, a version of himself from Aldra Middle School, weak and powerless. It made him think of all the people in the world like him. Now, he had the power to stand up for those who were too weak to fight back, to oppose those who destroyed lives like theirs. No, he wouldn't stand back anymore. He wouldn't act like the frail boy he once was. This monster had taken away his friends and mentor, and Izuku was determined to throw away his own mercy. He stood up, surprising All for One. "Oh, back for more, are we?" "Well, it won't be for long," All for One said, uncrossing his arms and sending a casual energy beam toward Deku, who remained still as it nearly struck him. But then, with a swift motion, he flicked the beam away effortlessly, green electricity crackling around him. All for One's eyes widened in shock. "Oh well, looks like I have to strike you down myself, huh? Didn't think I would be capable of taking another human life before all of this, but now, staring at someone as pathetic as you. I'm going to enjoy this," Deku said, a dark chuckle escaping his lips, which even startled the symbol of fear. "What did you think? I would be easy? Huh. Get ready. I'm going to keep fighting until my last breath," he declared, his emerald eyes glowing with determination. All for One thought to himself, confused by the sudden change in Izuku's demeanor. "Enough of this," the villain said, preparing to fire again, but suddenly, Deku appeared in front of him, slashing his hand off with a makeshift spear made from his black WHP quirk. Stunned, All for One barely had time to react before Izuku followed up with a powerful punch to his face. All for One, shaken from his stunned state, attempted to land consecutive punches on Deku, but the green-haired hero deftly dodged, smirking as he retaliated with multiple strikes from his black WHP spear. With a final swing, he sent the villain flying as if he were playing baseball. All for One halted midair, using his airwalk quirk to steady himself. "Enough," he shouted. "I don't know what's going on, but this brat is finished," he thought as he activated several quirks. Multiplier, Hypertrophy, Kinetic Booster, Brawn Boost, Overclock. All for One felt his body and arms swell with power, ready to crush Midoriya. He laughed menacingly, believing he had regained the advantage. Midoriya, however, looked up at the dark sky and shouted with fervor, acknowledging the challenge. As All for One lunged at him with incredible speed, his punch struck the ground, sending debris flying as the two locked eyes. All for One charged again, but Midoriya skillfully dodged until All for One finally landed a punch to his cheek. "Gotcha!" All for One laughed as Midoriya staggered back. Turning his face away, Midoriya revealed a smirk while wiping blood from his lip. He declared that despite All for One's immense power, he could not defeat a single teenager. This only fueled All for One's rage as he attempted another punch, but Midoriya countered with a swift gut punch that made the villain cough. Following up with a flurry of punches, Midoriya finished with a kick that sent All for One staggering back. As All for One prepared for another attack, Midoriya vanished from sight, leaving the villain searching for him. He looked up to see Midoriya floating above, a determined expression on his face. Midoriya reflected on his purpose, realizing the world's flaws and the power he possessed with one for all. He thought of the smiling faces of people and children who could suffer if this monster was allowed to roam free. The battle raged on, and the sun began to rise, illuminating the desolate battleground. Midoriya recalled the words of the great Buddha, declaring his resolve as the sun shone down upon him. All for One scoffed, dismissing Midoriya's aspirations and vowing to end the fight. The ground trembled as grotesque forms emerged from the symbol of fear, and All for One unleashed every quirk he had against Midoriya, who remained unfazed. Finally, All for One transformed into a monstrous figure, towering over the battlefield. "You're finished," he yelled as he charged toward Midoriya, who stood resolute. Midoriya closed his eyes, feeling the spirits of the previous One for All users supporting him. They urged him to finish the battle for the future, to ensure no one else would suffer, and to make the world a better place. With newfound determination, Midoriya raised his hand to the sky, feeling power surge through him just as All for One was about to strike. He lunged forward, raising his fist and unleashing a powerful attack. "United States of Smash," he cried, driving his fist into the monstrous villain with incredible force. The impact created a massive explosion that engulfed the area. As the dust settled, the once mighty All for One lay defeated, reduced to a battered form. Struggling to stand, he leaned against a wall, breathing and looking up at his impending escape, only to find Midoriya approaching slowly and deliberately. "Stay away," he stammered, flicking a finger to unleash a desperate attack that Midoriya easily dodged. Midoriya chuckled, realizing that All for One was attempting to flee. He approached the villain and knocked him down with a light kick. "Look at me," Midoriya demanded. All for One, despite his weakened state, met his gaze, and it was clear that the roles had reversed. Midoriya reflected on their similarities, acknowledging that they both envisioned a perfect world shaped by their powers. However, in Midoriya's world, there was no place for monsters who thrived on destruction and suffering. He warned All for One that no matter how he tried to escape or disguise himself, he would always be found and defeated. In that moment, All for One realized his fate, fear evident in his eyes as he faced the end of everything he had worked for. Why would a villain who thrives on death be afraid to die? Izuku pondered, his shadow looming over All for One's frightened expression. He prepared to strike, but just as he was about to bring his foot down, a portal opened beneath All for One, whisking him away. Izuku felt more annoyance than anger at the villain's escape as he collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Hours later, 𝗀𝐾𝐿 wandered through the alleyways, broken and battered both mentally and physically. The wounds from his fight with Muscular were still visible, and he struggled to keep himself upright. Yet, the physical injuries were nothing compared to the mental scars. Every time he closed his eyes, he was haunted by the image of her lifeless body, and it was all his fault. Over the years, he believed he had moved past the trauma of losing his entire family, especially his father, but Emi's death reopened that wound. No matter how hard he tried to move on, fate seemed determined to push him into becoming a monster, a villain. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts, pulling him back to reality. He turned to see a short, bald man with a mustache and a white lab coat emerging from a purple portal. "Looks like you need a hand," the man said. "Who are you?" 𝗀𝐾𝐿 asked, raising his hands defensively. "I mean no harm, boy. I'm Dr. 𝗀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, and I work for All for One," the doctor replied, extending his hand. "A villain? Why would I trust you?" 𝗀𝐾𝐿 staggered back. "Take a look," the doctor urged, pointing outside the alleyway. A billboard displayed the events of the previous night, with a headline that read, "UA student 𝗀𝐾𝐿 wanted for murder." The news reporter detailed the situation, and 𝗀𝐾𝐿 felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Look at them. They all hate you, and you have nowhere else to go," the doctor continued, trying to persuade 𝗀𝐾𝐿. But we can help you. We can give you a place to stay and show you what you were meant to be. He held out his hand, trusting 𝗀𝐻𝐿 despite knowing the potential consequences of his touch. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 sighed, leaning his head against the wall. He reminisced about his past, remembering how he had tried so hard to fit in after being adopted by Yagi. People often recoiled at the sight of his face or hesitated when they learned about his quirk. Even at 𝗀𝐻𝐿, he felt excluded from events due to the perceived danger of his abilities, despite his countless attempts to control them. The only exception was Midoriya, who had reached out to him in his darkest moments and become his best friend. But how had the world treated Izuku, simply because he was quirkless? Like trash. Perhaps that was why they were inseparable. They understood each other's pain of being different. Izuku Midoriya was the only one who truly understood him, and maybe that was why the world needed to change. After a moment of hesitation, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 reached out and grasped the doctor's hand, accepting his fate. Midoriya suddenly opened his eyes. Instead of the destroyed building, he found himself in a hospital bed, dressed in a gown with a bandage over his forehead. He turned to see Recovery Girl, Aizawa, and 𝗀𝗱𝗍 nearby. "Mr. Aizawa, where am I?" Midoriya asked, propping himself up in bed. "Recovery Girl's office." "You're back at 𝗀𝐻𝐿, kid," Aizawa replied. "Where is All Might?" Izuku asked, hope rising in his voice. "He's in another room resting. He was nearly in as bad shape as you, since you both have been out for 2 days, Recovery Girl interjected. Izuku slammed his hand against the pillows. "Oh, thank goodness," he whispered to himself. After changing into a white shirt and blue jacket, 𝗀𝗱𝗍 approached him hesitantly, with Aizawa and Present Mike watching from the side. "Midoriya, there's some news I think you should hear," 𝗀𝗍𝗍 said, a bead of sweat rolling down his face. "What is it?" Midoriya asked, his heart racing. "Tenko Shimura is alive, and we have confirmed evidence that he murdered Emi Aoki," 𝗀𝗍𝗍 revealed. The news hit Midoriya like a freight train, leaving him speechless. You better hope this is some sick joke, because there's no way he did," he exclaimed, anger bubbling within him. "Unfortunately, it's not a joke. We searched the area for her body but found nothing except for some gray dust. After DNA testing, we confirmed it was her," 𝗀𝗍𝗍 explained, unable to meet Midoriya's gaze. "But why would he do such a thing?" Izuku asked, staring at the ground. "We can't figure that out either," Aizawa chimed in, equally troubled by the situation, especially since 𝗀𝐻𝐿 had been one of his own students. Midoriya clenched his fists until blood began to trickle from his palms. Just then his phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out to see a message from 𝗀𝐻𝐿, "Meet me there. We can talk." The message included an address somewhere in the heart of Mizudafu. Without a moment's hesitation, he rushed out of the room. "Midoriya, wait." Aizawa called after him, but his words fell on deaf ears. Mizudafu was as busy as ever, throngs of people filling the streets. In the midst of it all, Izuku ran, his heart pounding. He stopped dead in his tracks when he spotted 𝗀𝐻𝐿, now with bleach-white hair, standing in front of a fast food restaurant. "Yo, Izuku." 𝗀𝐻𝐿 waved casually. "I honestly thought you wouldn't recognize me with the new hair. I got it after my quirk awakened, which is pretty convenient for hiding from heroes hunting me," he chuckled. "𝗀𝐻𝐿, explain what happened to Emi. Is it true?" Izuku demanded. "Yeah, everything you've heard is true. I killed Emi, but not intentionally. It was a freak accident when I tried to save her from falling," 𝗀𝐻𝐿 confessed. "Yes. I knew you couldn't turn that easily. We can go back and prove it was just an accident, you and I," Izuku said passionately, holding on to hope. "Izuku, I think I'm far past that point now. I ran like a guilty man, and I've made my mind up," 𝗀𝐻𝐿 replied, his tone heavy with resignation. "What do you mean you've made up your mind? You're joining the villains now?" Deku exclaimed, desperation evident in his body language. "Not exactly, Izuku. I just realized that this world needs change. We need a clean slate for society so that people like me will never end up like this again." 𝗀𝐻𝐿 asked Izuku if he understood the necessity of their actions. Izuku, caught off guard, finally responded that he understood. Growing up quirkless had shown him the cruelty of the world towards people like them, but now that he had power, he could direct it toward a positive change. 𝗀𝐻𝐿's face lit up with genuine happiness as he expressed his relief that Izuku got it. He urged Midoriya to join him in changing the world, extending his arms wide, though missing the pinky fingers on both hands. Izuku hesitated for a moment, then firmly stated that he could not join 𝗀𝐻𝐿. He argued that what 𝗀𝐻𝐿 proposed was madness. There was no way to destroy society and rebuild it from scratch. Change was necessary, but not in such a destructive manner. 𝗀𝐻𝐿's temper flared slightly as he insisted that he needed Izuku. Realistically, he believed that with Izuku's power, he could accomplish his plans quickly. However, he doubted he could match Izuku's strength without his drive and willpower, which is why he pleaded for Izuku to join him. Izuku wrestled with his next move, torn between his heroic duty and his friendship. He raised his fingers, contemplating whether a single Delaware smash would be enough to stop 𝗀𝐻𝐿, but he hesitated. 𝗀𝐻𝐿, sensing the tension, remarked that if Izuku was planning to kill him, he understood. After what he had done to Emi, he felt he deserved it. He even joked that being killed by his best friend would be the best way to go. Suddenly, a portal appeared around 𝗀𝐻𝐿. He acknowledged that he still had work to do and bid farewell to Izuku, expressing that it had been a pleasure to be his friend. With those final words, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 vanished, leaving Izuku standing there, reflecting on the intense conversation they had just shared. Chapter name: The War Between Classes. Chapter begins finally. The main event is here. The 1v1 tournaments where aspiring heroes can showcase their powers to the pro heroes in the most entertaining way possible. The first round promises to be intriguing, featuring Hitoshi Shinso of Class 1A against Nito Monoma of Class 1B, a matchup with a fascinating quirk combination. During the waiting PRD, Monoma descended the stairs of the spectator seats where his classmates were gathered. He playfully slapped 𝐵akugo on the shoulder, expressing his eagerness to defeat him and prove Class 1B's superiority. 𝐵akugo, visibly irritated, leaped forward but was quickly restrained by Kirishima and Kaminari. He shouted about how he would show Monoma what he was made of, while Monoma chuckled as he continued down the stairs. Kaminari commented on 𝐵akugo's easy provocation, earning a sharp glare from him. Meanwhile, Shinso made his way to the ring when he heard a familiar voice call out to him. It was 𝗀𝐻𝐿, who approached with a friendly demeanor. 𝗀𝐿 mentioned that he had encountered Monoma during the cavalry battle and learned about his ability to copy quirks with just a touch. Shinso was taken aback by this revelation, realizing the potential danger if Monoma managed to copy his quirk. He thanked 𝗀𝐿 for the heads-up, acknowledging that their brief conversation might have just saved him in the tournament. 𝗀𝐿 encouraged Shinso to show Class 1A's strength as he walked away. As the two competitors took their positions on opposite sides of the arena, Present Mike stepped forward to announce the start of the match. He enthusiastically introduced Shinso and Monoma to the crowd, who erupted in cheers. Shinso scoffed at the spectacle, while Monoma maintained a smug expression, as if he already knew he would win. With a loud declaration, Present Mike signaled the beginning of the match. To everyone's surprise, Monoma suddenly lunged forward, using explosions to propel himself toward Shinso. Realizing that Monoma had copied his quirk, Shinso felt a mix of disbelief and determination. He quickly prepared for the incoming attack. Monoma, grinning, charged an explosion in his hand and lunged at Shinso, but Shinso reacted swiftly, catching Monoma's wrist. The explosion detonated behind them, and Monoma's eyes widened in shock. Shinso tightened his grip on Monoma, lifting him and slamming him onto the ground, eliciting a roar of excitement from the crowd. Present Mike announced Shinso's impressive counterattack, while Aizawa observed from the stands, smirking at the results of Shinso's training. A flashback to the first week at U revealed Shinso walking with Midoriya in the hallway. Shinso inquired about a student Midoriya had mentioned, who was supposedly similar to him. Midoriya enthusiastically introduced Shinso to his former teacher, Shota Aizawa, also known as the underground hero Eraserhead. Aizawa, unimpressed, noted that he would be conducting special training sessions to enhance Shinso's physical abilities, despite his initial reluctance to treat him differently because of their similar quirks. Returning to the present, the excitement in the arena was palpable as the match continued. How could 𝗀𝐮𝐲 perform all those incredible moves? Uraraka watched in shock from the stands while Izuku smirked at Aizawa from the presenter booth, feeling a sense of pride. Midoriya believed in 𝗀𝐮𝐲's skills. Monoma felt as if he had been hit by a truck after 𝗀𝐮𝐲 threw him onto the concrete, momentarily losing consciousness. Determined not to be taken out easily, he shot an explosion at the ground, propelling himself upward and colliding with 𝗀𝐮𝐲, causing both to be pushed back slightly, giving them a moment to catch their breath. Monoma breathed, wiping blood from his mouth, realizing that 𝗀𝐮𝐲 was more than he appeared. He had charged at him faster than a jet, yet 𝗀𝐮𝐲 had managed to react and overpower him. Monoma remembered the warnings from his classmates about 𝗀𝐮𝐲's quirk and knew he needed to avoid speaking to him to prevent being brainwashed. 𝗀𝐮𝐲, also breathing, smirked at Monoma, taunting him about his earlier bravado regarding Class 1B's superiority. The provocation clearly affected Monoma, who wanted to retort but knew he needed to stay focused to remain in the competition. He decided to act quickly, manifesting an explosion in his hand and slamming it against the floor, creating a cloud of rubble and smoke that obscured the arena. 𝗀𝐮𝐲 struggled to see through the smoke, realizing Monoma was trying to confuse him for a surprise attack. However, he reminded himself not to fall for Nito's tricks and closed his eyes, focusing on his training to remain calm in the face of adversity. Suddenly, Monoma burst from the smoke, arm raised with an explosion ready to strike. Time seemed to slow for 𝗀𝐮𝐲 as he heard the explosion and felt the heat of it near his hair. Acting quickly, he parried Monoma's attack, causing him to miss the direct hit, but the resulting splash damage still knocked 𝗀𝐮𝐲 back. Monoma, shocked and unable to comprehend his defeat, stammered in disbelief. 𝗀𝐮𝐲, though weak, told Monoma to stand still, and in that moment, Monoma felt his body lose control. 𝗀𝐮𝐲 explained that Monoma's mistake was relying on a stolen quirk, which lacked the depth of his own hard-earned abilities. With determination, 𝗀𝐮𝐲 delivered a powerful punch to Monoma's gut, driving him to the ground. The intensity of the fight left everyone in awe. 𝗀𝐮𝐲 could have easily commanded Monoma to leave the ring, but he wanted to prove himself beyond a simple trick. Monoma lay on the ground, breathing after the aggressive assault. 𝗀𝐮𝐲 remarked that while Bakugo might be an aggressive fighter, he understood how to utilize his quirk fully, something Monoma had failed to do. As Monoma attempted to leap up for a surprise attack, 𝗀𝐮𝐲 dodged, taking the splash damage head-on. Fueled by adrenaline, he leaped forward and landed a decisive blow that sent Monoma flying out of the ring and onto the grass. Present Mike announced that Nito Monoma was out of bounds and declared Hitoshi 𝗀𝐮𝐲 the winner, prompting cheers from the crowd. 𝗀𝐮𝐲, breathing and exhausted, took in the applause after such an intense battle. He could barely walk after enduring 2 explosions but felt a sense of accomplishment. As he collapsed to the ground, his classmates watched in shock, surprise, and joy at his unexpected victory. Kirishima remarked on how 𝗀𝐮𝐲 radiated confidence, while Bakugo acknowledged 𝗀𝐮𝐲's talent as a fighter, appreciating the defeat of someone who had copied his quirk. Both 𝗀𝐮𝐲 and Monoma were quickly taken to Recovery Girl while Cementos worked on repairing the ring, commenting on the challenges of his job. After the arena was cleaned up, the sports festival continued with 𝗀𝐮𝐴 facing off against Shoto Todoroki. Uraraka greeted 𝗀𝐮𝐲, who was bandaged and in an arm sling, surprised he was still in the competition. 𝗀𝐮𝐲 chuckled about the pain from Bakugo's explosions. Meanwhile, Monoma sat in the stands, embarrassed and bandaged, reflecting on his defeat against 𝗀𝐮𝐲, who he believed was not even among the top 4 strongest in Class 1A. Present Mike introduced the next match, announcing 𝗀𝐻𝐴 from Class 1A against his classmate and the son of the number 2 hero, Shoto Todoroki. 𝗧𝗟 gulped at the thought of facing Todoroki, wishing he could jump out of the ring before the match began. He reminded himself that his friends were supporting him, despite the pressure. In the stands, his classmates exchanged glances, secretly betting on Todoroki but offering 𝗧𝗟 reassuring smiles. Todoroki, noticing 𝗧𝗟's distraction, called out to him, reminding him to stay focused. Hanta shook himself out of his thoughts, preparing for the battle ahead. Present Mike announced the start of the match, and Midnight, lying on the ground, signaled that they were ready. 𝗧𝗟 sprang into action, summoning tape and wrapping it around Todoroki, attempting to pull him out of the ring. However, Todoroki quickly created ice beneath his feet to anchor himself and ignited his flames, causing 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗏 to feel an intense heat. 𝗧𝗧𝗧 yelped in surprise, feeling as if he were touching a hot oven. Thinking quickly, he cut the tape around his elbow, breathing heavily. He remarked that he would need a shower after this. The tape around Todoroki melted away, allowing him to free himself. Todoroki acknowledged 𝗧𝗧𝗧's quick thinking but then unleashed a wave of ice that knocked 𝗧𝗧𝗧 out of the ring. With determination, Todoroki declared that he was there to win. Present Mike announced that 𝗧𝗧𝗧 was out of bounds and that Shoto Todoroki was the winner, prompting cheers from the crowd, which had already begun to rally behind him. After stepping out of the ring, Todoroki approached 𝗧𝗧𝗧 and offered him a hand up, apologizing for the fire and explaining that he needed a quick solution. 𝗧𝗧𝗧, still breathing, responded that they were all there to win. The next round commenced quickly, as the ring required less setup than before. Present Mike introduced the next battle between Class 1A and Class 1B, with Denki Kaminari facing 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Kaminari wore a confident smirk, while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 displayed a competitive grin. As the match began, Kaminari felt a twinge of worry. He had no idea what 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's quirk was, and his opponent's plain appearance made him uneasy. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 made the first move, jumping into the air and creating a giant bubble that trapped Kaminari inside. Frantically, Kaminari banged on the bubble, demanding to be let out. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 explained that he could trap people in indestructible air bubbles and asked Midnight for a 10-second countdown. As she began counting, the tension in the stands grew, with Class 1A cringing at the potential defeat. Suddenly, Kaminari realized that he had been overthinking the situation. With a confident smirk, he unleashed a bright burst of electricity that shattered the bubble and surged through the arena, hitting 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Midnight, shielding her eyes from the light, looked over to see 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 lying on the ground, clearly in pain but not knocked out. She declared Kaminari the winner, and he gave the crowd a thumbs up, relieved that the bubble hadn't conducted electricity. Meanwhile, Iida faced off against Mei Hatsum from Support Studies. Mei, known for her inventive gadgets, utilized her creations to keep Iida on his toes. Iida rushed in, expecting a quick victory, but Mei's inventions, including spider legs and thrusters, kept him at bay. She was using the battle to showcase her gadgets to the support company executives in the audience. After 10 minutes, Mei stepped out of the ring, having demonstrated everything she intended. Iida felt humiliated, realizing he had been used as a demonstration. Momo commented on the situation, while Kaminari noted that Iida had flailed around as Mei turned the tournament into an advertisement. Bakugo acknowledged Mei's boldness, surprising his friends with the respect he showed her. Midoriya, still amused, recorded the entire match on his phone, laughing as he thought about how much Tensei would enjoy it once he got off patrol. The tournament was off to an exciting start. In a dimly lit, cluttered room, a blonde teenage girl with messy buns sat on the couch, her attention fixed on the television. The sports festival was underway, and two students from Class 1A were about to face off. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, introducing the competitors, the Pink Wonder, Mina Ishido, and the sparkling boy, Yuga Aoyama. As the match began, Yuga unleashed his naval laser quirk, but Mina skillfully dodged the beams with her impressive acrobatics. Eventually, Yuga overexerted himself, allowing Mina to deliver a decisive uppercut. Feeling bored, the girl sank her head into the couch pillow, surrounded by empty food bags. Suddenly, she heard the lock on the door click open, and in walked Shiggy. Her face lit up as she jumped off the couch to embrace him. She eagerly asked if he had brought snacks. Shiggy chuckled, his voice deeper than usual, revealing himself as 𝗀𝐭𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, with his long, messy black hair and signature red eyes. He pulled out a test tube of BLD, causing Himiko's eyes to gleam with excitement as she snatched it and began to drink. Tenko playfully remarked on her lack of gratitude and asked if she could help dye his hair black again. Himiko, still focused on the TV, responded dismissively. Tenko smirked as he dropped the bags of food and glanced at the screen, recalling his own experience at the sports festival years ago. Himiko interrupted his thoughts, pointing out that no one awarded medals for 4th place, especially not after so many years. 𝗀𝐿 feigned injury at her words, but soon regained his composure, watching as a bird-themed boy and a girl with a black ponytail entered the arena. He teased Himiko about her interest in the event, knowing she typically disliked heroes. She admitted to being bored without him around, especially after he had refused to let her keep the cats she wanted. 𝗀𝐿 joked about not wanting their home to turn into a cat sanctuary. Their banter reminded them of how far they had come together. Flashback: some years ago, a young 𝗀𝐿 walked the empty streets in the late afternoon, the sun setting behind her. She returned home from another difficult day at school, forced to suppress her true self due to her parents' harsh expectations. As she walked past a playground, she noticed a tall figure sitting on the swings, looking forlorn. The teenager, no older than 17, had long white hair and wore a black hoodie and breathes that 𝗀𝐿 found amusing. Curiosity led her to approach him. She asked if he was all right, catching him off guard. He warned her about talking to strangers, but 𝗀𝐿 shared her own troubles, revealing the strictness of her parents. The man, 𝗀𝐿, recognized the sadness in her eyes, feeling a connection to her struggles. He introduced himself and shared that he had faced similar challenges growing up. 𝗀𝐿 was surprised by his kindness and asked how he had overcome his difficulties. 𝗀𝐿 smiled and showed her a photo of himself with friends, explaining that he had people who supported him. 𝗀𝐿 felt a glimmer of hope and decided she should leave before her parents noticed her absence. 𝗀𝐿 cautioned her about talking to strangers but waved goodbye, brightening her day. The next day, 𝗀𝐿 returned to the park and 𝗀𝐿 was there again. She admitted that he was easier to talk to than her parents, prompting him to invite her to share her thoughts. Over the following weeks, they met regularly, discussing their interests and how to cope with their villain quirks. They even played games together, with 𝗀𝐿 lending her his DS to enjoy Nintendogs, deepening their bond. They were the highlight of her day in a place where she could truly be herself. Eventually, this began to boost her confidence in presenting her real self to others instead of wearing a mask. However, one day changed everything. Children were playing soccer during physical education class outside on the bright green grass, the sounds of whistles and laughter filling the air. A boy skillfully dribbled the ball past several opponents, preparing to deliver a powerful kick toward the goal. Unfortunately, another boy was in the way, and the ball struck him, causing the game to come to an abrupt stop as everyone rushed to check on him. Among them was 𝗀𝐿, who hurried over to the boy. He groaned, clutching his head. As 𝗀𝐿 examined the situation, she noticed blood seeping through his messy hair. Initially worried, her expression shifted to a smile as she leaned closer. She grinned, revealing her fangs, while the boy looked up at her in fear. It was clear that 𝗀𝐿 was sent home immediately after the incident, and things were not any better at the 𝗀𝐿 household. Her father yelled at her, expressing his frustration. He questioned why she hadn't listened to anything they had taught her. 𝗀𝐿, tears streaming down her face, apologized, struggling to control her emotions. Her mother sighed, expressing disappointment while trying to conceal her anger. She remarked that they kept trying, but 𝗀𝐿 just wouldn't stop. In a moment of anguish, 𝗀𝐿 cried out, questioning why they couldn't love her for who she was. Her father responded harshly, asking if she wanted to be an inhuman villain who harmed others for their blood. 𝗀𝐿 stepped forward, attempting to explain her perspective. Before she could finish, her father struck her across the face, leaving her in shock as she felt the sting of his hand. Confusion and pain filled her heart as she wondered why her parents couldn't show her the love she saw in other families. Feeling overwhelmed, she quickly got to her feet and ran out the door, ignoring her mother's calls. Barefoot, she sprinted down the hard, aged road until she reached the park, a place where she felt safe. 𝗀𝐿 was at the park, concerned about 𝗀𝐿's absence since she should have been home from school by now. He heard distant cries and turned to see 𝗀𝐿 approaching. As she drew closer, he noticed her tear-streaked face and the mark on her cheek. 𝗀𝐿 managed to whisper that her parents had hit her. 𝗀𝐿's heart sank as he recalled his own painful memories of abuse. He quickly pushed his own trauma aside to focus on helping 𝗀𝐿. He enveloped her in a comforting hug, allowing her to cling to him tightly. He reassured her that everything would be all right and promised to take her somewhere safe. After a brief walk, they arrived at a secluded alleyway. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 set her down and explained that he needed to keep a low profile, revealing a hand mask from his pocket. He donned the mask and pulled up his hoodie, declaring himself as 𝗏𝐿𝐻𝐿. Toga looked bewildered, but 𝗀𝐻𝐿's playful demeanor lightened the mood. He struck a pose, trying to make her smile. As they entered a dimly lit bar, they were greeted by two unusual figures. One was a bartender with a face of black flames, and the other was a ninja-like character with a lizard quirk. The ninja asked where 𝗀𝐻𝐿 had been, while the bartender expressed annoyance at 𝗀𝐻𝐿's antics. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 introduced Toga and asked them to look after her while he took care of something important. 𝗀𝐻𝐿, the bartender, reluctantly agreed but warned that any trouble caused by Toga would come out of 𝗀𝐻𝐿's allowance. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 thanked them and skipped out of the bar, leaving Toga in their care. She sat quietly, sipping orange juice, still troubled by her parents' treatment. Meanwhile, back at the Toga household, her parents paced anxiously. The mother expressed concern over Toga's absence, while the father felt something was different this time. They discussed their frustrations, worried that Toga might grow up to be a monster if they couldn't reach her. Suddenly, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 appeared, removing his hoodie to reveal his long white hair, startling them. The father took a defensive stance, protecting his wife as he confronted 𝗀𝐻𝐿. He shouted, questioning 𝗀𝐻𝐿's connection to 𝗏𝐿. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 smirked, revealing that he was a good friend who had been looking after her while they enjoyed their lives. He pointed out that they must have noticed how 𝗏𝐿 took longer to return from school because she felt safe away from them. With a confident stride, he moved closer to them, sensing their fear. The mother attempted to call the authorities, but 𝗀𝐻𝐿 swiftly pulled out a pistol and shot the phone from her hand, causing it to drop in shock. He sighed, expressing his disdain for using weapons, and declared that he was there to teach them a lesson about not hurting those he cared about. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 tossed the gun aside, deeming it uncivilized. The mother, panicking, asked what he wanted, suggesting money. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 chuckled, stating that he wanted nothing material. What he truly despised was abusive parents. In an instant, he vanished from their sight, only to reappear inches from their faces, dusting them away. The next day, their house was found reduced to dust. Since 𝗀𝐻𝐿 had taken 𝗏𝐿𝐻 under his wing as a little sister, he disliked being called her dad, especially given their small age difference. 𝗏𝐿𝐻 had never felt more accepted than when she was with the League, where she could express herself freely without societal pressures. Suddenly, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 was jolted from his thoughts when a box of cereal hit him on the head. He winced in pain, realizing he had spaced out. 𝗏𝐿𝐻 teased him, saying she had to bring him back to reality somehow. With a sigh, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 returned his attention to the TV, where a fight had just concluded between a long-haired girl and a boy with a dark shadow behind him. The next match promised to be more exciting. Present Mike announced the upcoming fight between Izuku Kirishima from Class 1A and 𝗀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 from Class 1B. Kirishima stretched his arms, expressing his eagerness for the match, while 𝗀𝐿 chuckled, noting their similarities and how well he could read Kirishima's moves. As the match began, 𝗀𝐿 charged forward, his hands spinning. Kirishima quickly activated his quirk, hardening his arms to block 𝗀𝐿's attack. The pressure mounted as 𝗀𝐿 relentlessly pushed Kirishima back toward the edge of the ring. Kirishima realized he needed to make a decisive move. With a grin, he opened his arms, inviting 𝗀𝐿 to hit him, which 𝗀𝐿 interpreted as overconfidence. 𝗀𝐿 took the bait and charged, landing a blow that made Kirishima groan in pain. However, Kirishima quickly pulled 𝗀𝐿 into a bear hug, refusing to let him win easily. With a powerful move, he suplexed 𝗀𝐿 out of the ring, leaving the crowd in shock. Breathing from the effort, Kirishima lay at the edge of the arena, victorious but aware of the risk he had taken. In the audience, Mina cheered for her friend, while Midoriya observed with a laugh. As 𝗀𝐻𝐿 prepared for his match, he walked through the stadium halls, where he encountered Midoriya. Midoriya advised him not to go easy on his opponent and to give it his all, or he might lose. 𝗀𝐻𝐿 scoffed at the idea of losing to his opponent, but Midoriya's tone turned serious, warning him that if he didn't step up, he might not prove himself stronger than Todoroki. 𝗀𝐻𝐿, angered, turned to confront Midoriya, but found he had vanished. Shaking his head, he muttered that Midoriya better run, feeling a mix of shock and confusion from their interaction. He pondered how the same Izuku Midoriya who had once babysat him and played video games together had transformed into someone so formidable. With a sigh, Bakugo continued his way to the ring, determined to face his challenge head-on. Chapter name: Bakugo vs. 𝐸𝗷𝗏. To the next set of battles. Chapter begins. The final battle of the first round was about to begin. Ochako 𝐸𝗷𝗏 vs. Katsuki Bakugo. While Bakugo believed it would be an easy victory, 𝐸𝗷𝗏 was determined to prove him wrong. Midoriya, their teacher, decided to let the fight unfold without interference. In the seating area, Class 1A debated the outcome of the match. 𝗧𝗟𝗘 expressed his doubts about 𝐸𝗷𝗏's chances, stating that while she was tough, Bakugo was a different kind of fighter. Jiro defended 𝐸𝗷𝗏, reminding 𝗧𝗟𝗘 that he had underestimated ― before, who had emerged victorious against a formidable opponent. ―, with a playful grin, teased 𝗧𝗟𝗘 about his lack of faith. 𝗧𝗟𝗘, feeling cornered, admitted that he had been surprised by ―'s training. As the match was about to start, the students settled down, eager to see the action. As 𝐸𝗷𝗏 walked through the tunnel and into the stadium, she steeled herself, remembering what was at stake. She needed to succeed for her family's future and to make Deku proud. The memory of Deku's encouraging smile from years ago fueled her determination. She had always admired him, watching his interviews and taking his advice to heart, even training hard to improve her abilities. Upon entering the ring, 𝐸𝗷𝗏 faced Bakugo, who was known as one of the strongest in Class 1A. His fierce glare made her heart race, but she stood tall, ready to fight. Bakugo, dismissively referring to her as round face, warned her that he wouldn't hold back. 𝐸𝗷𝗏 acknowledged his intensity, stating that she expected nothing less from him. Present Mike announced the match with enthusiasm, introducing both fighters to the audience. Deku watched from the sidelines, curious about who would emerge victorious. With a loud declaration, the match began. Bakugo launched himself forward with explosive speed, leaving everyone in awe of his power. 𝐸𝗷𝗏 quickly dodged his attack, narrowly avoiding the blast. Bakugo, surprised by her agility, propelled himself back into the ring and countered with an explosion aimed at her back. To everyone's astonishment, 𝐸𝗷𝗏 endured the pain and retaliated by grabbing Bakugo's hand and slamming him into the ground. As he found himself levitating, Bakugo realized he had underestimated her strength. Determined not to be thrown out of the ring, he propelled himself downward. 𝐸𝗷𝗏, sensing his approach, levitated upward, surprising Bakugo. Their heads collided, causing both to feel the impact. Bakugo, frustrated, shouted at her while holding his head, and 𝐸𝗷𝗏, despite the pain, chuckled at the situation. Deku observed the fight with admiration, noting how well 𝐸𝗷𝗏 was holding her own against Bakugo. As the battle continued, Bakugo decided to stop playing around and charged at 𝐸𝗷𝗏 with another explosion. She raised her arms to defend herself, feeling the pain but pushing through. With a swift motion, she struck Bakugo across the face, sending him to the ground. Despite her injuries, Bakugo was relentless, grabbing her ankles and causing another explosion that sent her flying. Bakugo, impressed by her resilience, acknowledged her ability to fight back, though he believed it wouldn't be enough to defeat him. 𝐸𝗷𝗏, refusing to give up, charged at him again, determined to keep fighting. She dug her feet into the ground, bracing herself against his next attack. As Bakugo finally managed to bring her down with another explosion, he looked down at her, believing the match was over. However, 𝐸𝗷𝗏, with trembling fingers, lifted her arms and declared that she had one last move. Bakugo, sensing something was off, looked up just in time to see debris falling from the damaged ring. It was 𝐸𝗷𝗏's plan all along. Quickly, Bakugo charged an explosion to destroy the falling debris, but 𝐸𝗷𝗏 was still on her feet. In a moment of surprise, she tackled him, pushing him toward the edge of the arena. As she fought with all her might, 𝐸𝗷𝗏 thought to herself that she needed to win. No matter what, 𝐸𝗷𝗏 was determined to live up to expectations. She needed to push herself, but as she tackled Bakugo, her energy faded, and she fell unconscious, sliding off him and onto the floor. Bakugo looked down in shock, trying to comprehend that this seemingly ordinary girl had given him a good challenge. Finally, he chuckled, acknowledging her effort, and started to leave the ring with his hands in his pockets. Present Mike declared that Uraraka could no longer fight, and Bakugo was the winner. The audience erupted into applause, some excited by the fight while others were concerned for Uraraka's well-being as she was taken out on a stretcher, presumably to Recovery Girl's room. Mina expressed her worry, hoping Uraraka would be okay. Deku reassured her, recalling all the times he had visited Recovery Girl's office during his first year. After such an intense match, the festival continued as the next round was announced. 𝗀𝐿 gulped, realizing he was up against Todoroki. He felt overwhelmed and covered his face with his hands. Kirishima tried to encourage him, reminding him of his previous victory. Todoroki, trying to ease the tension, offered not to use his flames, but 𝗀𝐿, feeling cornered, reacted defensively, realizing he might have just signed his own fate. After some cleanup of the ring from the previous fight, the next round began. Present Mike introduced the competitors, announcing 𝗀𝐿 Hitoshi against Shoto Todoroki. 𝗀𝐿 thought to himself that perhaps he could catch Todoroki off guard. As the match started, he taunted Todoroki about surpassing Deku, but Todoroki remained silent. 𝗀𝐿 continued to provoke him, mentioning his father's disdain for All Might and Deku, but his words were cut short when he was suddenly engulfed in ice, pushing him out of the ring. Present Mike announced Todoroki as the winner, and after the match, Todoroki freed 𝗀𝐿 from the ice. 𝗀𝐿 expressed his discomfort and apologized, while Todoroki admitted he had overreacted. Next, Present Mike introduced Tenya, who was determined for the upcoming fight against Denki Kaminari. Denki greeted the crowd with enthusiasm, hoping to win over some fans. As the match began, Kaminari unleashed a bolt of lightning toward Ida, but Ida's jet engines activated, and he vanished from sight. Denki was shocked until he heard the sound of jet engines behind him. In a flash, Ida grabbed Denki and swung him out of the ring. Present Mike declared Ida the winner, and Deku watched, impressed by Ida's growth since childhood. Mina commented on the quickness of the fight, thinking 𝗀𝐿 versus Todoroki would have been the fastest. Bakugo, arms crossed, teased her about her upcoming match against Tokoyami. Mina protested playfully. When her match began, she threw acid at Dark Shadow, but Tokoyami skillfully dodged her attacks, ultimately pushing her out of the ring. Midnight announced Tokoyami as the winner, and Mina expressed her frustration at the loss, but Midnight tried to comfort her. The next round was introduced as a showdown between two heavy hitters, Eijiro Kirishima and Katsuki Bakugo. Kirishima confidently declared his intention to win, while Bakugo shrugged off the challenge. As the match commenced, Kirishima charged in with a right hook, which Bakugo barely dodged. Bakugo remained on the defensive until a blow scraped across his cheek, signaling the intensity of the battle ahead. Leaving Bakugo with a red mark across his cheek, he glared at Kirishima and expressed his frustration. Bakugo unleashed an explosion aimed at Kirishima's midsection as he pushed away but managed to stay on his feet. Kirishima chuckled, acknowledging the hit but confident that Bakugo's tactics wouldn't work on him. The two continued to exchange blows, with Kirishima attempting an elbow strike, but Bakugo countered with an even larger explosion. As the fight progressed, it became evident that Kirishima was beginning to lose his edge. His stamina was waning. After taking another explosion, Kirishima struggled to maintain his balance, prompting Bakugo to laugh. He boasted about his toughness, asserting that no one was tougher than him. In a sudden burst of energy, Bakugo unleashed a rapid series of explosions at point-blank range. After one final blast, Kirishima was left unable to stand in the center of the arena. With the match concluded, Midnight announced Kirishima's inability to continue, declaring Bakugo Katsuki the winner to the cheers of the audience. From above, Deku watched with pride at Bakugo's progress over the past month. Reflecting on Bakugo's previous mindset, Deku realized he had never imagined Bakugo could surpass Uraraka. However, after learning to coexist with other students who possessed incredible quirks, Bakugo had transformed into a formidable fighter. Deku eagerly anticipated the upcoming rounds. Chapter name: Tensei and the Future. Chapter begins. The semifinals were underway, with each match determining who would be among the final 2 competitors. It was fitting that the last 4 were the strongest students in Class 1A, all while Izuku monitored their progress. After a moment of anticipation, the next opponents were announced. 𝐻𝐮𝐬𝐸 versus Shoto Todoroki, the board displayed. 𝐻𝐮𝐬𝐸 felt a silent gulp at the thought of facing Todoroki. He knew Todoroki was significantly stronger, and one mistake could lead to instant defeat, especially with his ice powers that could completely immobilize him. Taking a deep breath, 𝐻𝐮𝐬𝐸 walked toward the entrance of the main stadium, the overwhelming noise of the crowd amplifying his heartbeat as he realized what he was fighting for. He was the brother of 𝐻𝐮𝐬𝐸, and he would not let his family down. Finally, he stood face to face with Todoroki in the ring. BannTheMann announced to the crowd, welcoming them back. In this corner, we have the star of 1A, 𝐻𝐮𝐬𝐸. The crowd cheered. And his opponent is none other than Shoto Todoroki, who has been slamming the competition. The excitement built up to one final explosive event. After a brief moment, BannTheMann shouted, "Start." As soon as the word left his mouth, Ida's jet engines roared to life, propelling him toward Todoroki with incredible speed. Todoroki quickly crouched to dodge the incoming attack and, in a swift motion, froze the area around him to hinder Ida's movement. Realizing he was at a disadvantage, Ida boosted out of the frozen zone. Sensing an opportunity, Todoroki unleashed waves of ice toward Ida, who skillfully dodged and flipped away from each attack. From the stands, Kaminari remarked on Todoroki's ability to keep Ida at bay, recalling his own attempts to tag Ida with lightning. Kirishima noted the struggle between the two, pointing out that while Ida couldn't constantly use his engines, Todoroki couldn't rely on his ice without risking injury. 𝗧𝗟𝗃 reminded them that Todoroki still had a significant advantage with his flames. After a moment of firing ice, Todoroki realized he had lost sight of Ida, who was using the ice as cover. Suddenly, he heard the sound of Ida's engines approaching from behind. Ida gritted his teeth, preparing to grab Todoroki from behind, thinking he could throw him out of the ring. However, just as he reached for Todoroki, the flames erupted, burning Ida's hand and preventing him from grabbing hold. In a moment of panic, Ida attempted to kick Todoroki, but before he could land the blow, ice quickly spread up his leg, freezing him in place. Todoroki, with a cold demeanor, remarked on Ida's panic as he stood victorious. Midnight declared the match over, announcing, 𝐻𝐮𝐬𝐸 is no longer able to fight. Shoto Todoroki is the winner. After the match, Todoroki helped Ida out of the ice with his flames. He offered an apology, acknowledging how close Ida had come to winning. Ida, adjusting his glasses to hide his expression, replied that it was no problem, though it was clear he was struggling with the loss. When Todoroki returned to the stands, Uraraka inquired about Ida's whereabouts. Todoroki shrugged, mentioning that Ida had said he needed to attend to something. ― expressed concern, knowing how much Ida wanted to make his family proud by winning the festival. Izuku, observing from below, felt a sense of curiosity about Ida's situation and decided to investigate. He quickly made his way to the corridor, where he found Ida on the phone. "Ida!" Midoriya called out, catching his student's attention. Ida turned, startled, and tried to hide his face, his voice strained as he responded. Midoriya paused, sensing something was off. He asked if it was about losing to Todoroki, but Ida suddenly raised his voice, cutting him off. "It's not about that," Ida exclaimed, tears beginning to fall. "My brother. He is in critical condition." Midoriya's eyes widened in shock. "Wait, what?" he exclaimed, dropping his usual cheerful demeanor. Ida continued, explaining that his parents had called to inform him that Tensei was on a mission against the hero killer and had lost. Midoriya clenched his fists, anger and concern flooding through him. He realized he had not been notified about Tensei's mission and felt a deep sense of regret. "Where is he located?" Midoriya asked after a moment of contemplation. They said he was in a hospital in 𝐻𝐻𝐶. Before Ida could finish, Midoriya vanished, leaving Ida stunned. "And Midoriya-Sensei?" Ida called out, bewildered. In an instant, Midoriya appeared in the waiting room of 𝐻𝐻𝐶 Hospital, drawing gasps from the people present. "My God, it's the number 3 hero, Deku," someone exclaimed. Ignoring the commotion, Midoriya approached the woman at the desk and asked for 𝗀𝐮𝐸𝐸's location. Deku introduced himself as a friend and co-worker of 𝗀𝐻𝐶, trying to maintain a kind demeanor despite the stress he felt about 𝗀𝐻𝐶's health. The receptionist directed him to the 3rd floor, and he thanked her before vanishing and instantly appearing in front of 𝗀𝐻𝐶's room. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. Inside the room, he found 𝗀𝐻𝐶's parents waiting by his bedside. Midoriya greeted them, noting 𝗀𝐻𝐶's condition, which was far from good. 𝗀𝐻𝐶 was covered in bandages, and his legs were elevated, a clear sign of the severe damage inflicted by the hero killer. This realization only fueled Deku's anger at himself for not being able to prevent it. 𝗀𝐻𝐶's mother expressed her gratitude for Deku's presence, acknowledging how busy he was as the number 3 hero. He reassured her that he had time and just wanted to check on his friend. 𝗀𝐻𝐶's father explained that 𝗀𝐻𝐶 had been unconscious since they found him and was currently on life support, fighting for his life. Deku felt a surge of anger and confusion as he reflected on the unusual nature of Sten's attacks. Typically, Sten left heroes injured but alive to spread his twisted message. This time, however, it was different, and Deku wished he had been informed sooner. He felt he could have intervened and stopped the villain. 𝗀𝐻𝐶's mother attempted to comfort him, and he managed a weak smile in response. Hours passed, and Deku remained in the waiting area, determined to stay by his friend's side. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name. It was Tenya, now back in his uniform, who approached to sit next to his teacher. Deku apologized for leaving Tenya behind, and Tenya understood, acknowledging the strong bond between him and his brother. They exchanged small talk about the recent festival, with Deku trying to lighten the mood with humor. However, both were masking their true feelings of anger and loss. Deku noticed the tears in Tenya's eyes as he expressed disbelief over Sten's actions against his brother, a true hero to many. Tenya's clenched fists revealed his frustration, prompting Deku to offer support. He shared his own experience of feeling lost after a battle, emphasizing the importance of not letting grief consume him. Deku reassured Tenya that he and everyone at 𝗀𝐻𝐶 were there for him. As he stood to leave, he gave Tenya a smile and a small gesture before vanishing from sight. In that moment, Tenya realized something profound about his teacher. Despite carrying the weight of being the number 3 hero and all the trauma that came with it, Deku still wore a smile for those around him, believing in the best of people. It was no wonder his brother had always looked up to him. Flashback to 6 years ago, in a quiet park, a young Tenya was eager to showcase his training results to his older brother and Izuku Midoriya, who was interning under 𝗀𝐻𝐶 at the time. He announced his intent to run across the park in record time, and 𝗀𝐻𝐶 prepared to time him with a stopwatch. With a countdown, Tenya took off, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. 𝗀𝐻𝐶 watched proudly, while Midoriya, though supportive, seemed distracted. 𝗀𝐻𝐶 noticed and expressed concern for his friend, asking if he was all right. Midoriya explained that he felt the absence of Tenko and Aoki, struggling to fill the void with hero work and training. 𝗀𝐻𝐶 acknowledged Midoriya's strength and encouraged him to talk to someone when he needed to. Midoriya was taken aback by 𝗀𝐻𝐶's wisdom and chuckled at the thought of him giving speeches at colleges. Their light-hearted moment was interrupted when Tenya comically ran headfirst into a tree, a reminder that he still had much to learn. Presently, some time had passed since the festival ended at 𝗀𝐻𝐶. After allowing their students some days of rest following an intense festival, new challenges loomed on the horizon. The students of Class 1A entered the classroom, and among them was BAKUGO, who walked in with his hands in his pockets. As he stepped inside, he suddenly locked eyes with Todoroki. BAKUGO gritted his teeth and marched toward Todoroki's desk. Mina chuckled, sensing the tension, while Tsu remarked that she thought BAKUGO would handle it better. Todoroki noticed BAKUGO approaching and sighed, greeting him with a rare hint of humor. BAKUGO declared that just because Todoroki was riding high didn't mean he was safe. He intended to train harder and reclaim his spot at the top. Todoroki nodded, acknowledging their unspoken rivalry. Midoriya then appeared, sitting on Todoroki's desk between the two. Startled, BAKUGO reacted by unleashing a small explosion, which created a cloud of smoke that left the classroom coughing. When the dust settled, Midoriya remained unscathed, albeit confused. He realized he shouldn't surprise Bakugo like that and crossed out "angry but Pomeranian little brother" from his list of potential jump scares. Kaminari exclaimed that he knew Midoriya was doing it on purpose. Midoriya chuckled and clapped his hands together, welcoming the class back and announcing that the exciting part of their hero journey had arrived: hero names. Uraraka expressed her enthusiasm, while Mina lamented that she would have thought of a name sooner if she had known they would be picking them so early in the year. Suddenly, someone kicked through the door, and Midoriya tensed at the familiar sound of a WHP. The newcomer declared her presence and asserted that her judgment was better than Midoriya's. He crossed his arms and retorted that it was always the pros trying to stifle young heroes' creativity. The class erupted in laughter when Nemuri reminded Midoriya of his initial hero name, Mighty Boy. Midoriya stuttered, unable to respond, while some students struggled to contain their amusement. Midoriya clapped his hands again, redirecting the class's attention. He explained that each student would present their hero names one at a time and reminded them that once a name was chosen, it would stick unless they found a chance to change it. The classroom buzzed with chatter as everyone scrambled for ideas. One by one, the students approached the board to present their hero names, which were evaluated by Midnight and Midoriya for appropriateness. Aoyama proudly declared his name: "Shining Hero, I cannot stop twinkling," which means you cannot stop my sparkles. Mina followed with hero name Alien Queen, but Midnight quickly shot it down as copyrighted. After some back and forth, Mina settled on Pinky. Kirishima introduced himself as Sturdy Hero, Red Riot, while Jiro presented Hearing Hero, Earphone Jack. Shoji opted for Tentacle Hero, Tentacle, and Siro chose Taping Hero, Cellophane. Ojiro announced Martial Arts Hero, Tailman, and Sato stated simply Sweets Hero, Sugarman. Kaminari then presented Stun Gun Hero, Charge Bolt, and Hagakure introduced herself as Stealth Hero, Invisible Girl. Yaoyorozu presented Everything Hero, Kriati, and to everyone's surprise, Todoroki chose to stick with his own name, Shoto. Midoriya was taken aback, asking if he wouldn't choose something more flashy, but Todoroki shrugged, stating he liked his name. Tokoyami selected Jet Black Hero, Tsukuyami, while Mineta, barely visible, declared Fresh-Picked Hero, Grape Juice. Koji Koda, shy and nervous, presented Petting Hero, Anima, with a sign. Bakugo was next, and as expected, he declared King Explosion Murder, with his signature glare. Midnight found it excessive, and Midoriya encouraged him to think of something better. Bakugo insisted it was perfect, then scrambled to come up with Lord Explosion Murder, which elicited a collective groan from the class. Finally, Shinso Hitoshi presented Hypnosis Hero, Nighthide, wearing a small smile. Midoriya felt proud of his students' growth. Midnight jokingly suggested that Shinso and Aizawa should get a DNA test, to which Shinso reacted with disgust, not wanting Aizawa as a father figure. Midoriya cleared his throat and continued, explaining that alongside their hero names, they would be interning with a hero interested in them and their quirks. He noted that mentors would be chosen based on their performance at the sports festival. Jiro expressed concern about whether there would be invites left after the first round, while Momo worried about her chances after her earlier defeat. Uraraka burst with energy, her enthusiasm lighting up the room. She pointed a thumb at herself, exuding a vibrant aura. Mina, taken by surprise, wondered how she managed to radiate such confidence. Shinso, though unsure, admired her spirit. When the Pro-Hero draft results were announced, it was no surprise who topped the list. Shoto Todoroki led with 4,745, followed by Bakugo Katsuki with 3,134, Tenya Ida with 501, Fumikage Tokoyami with 356, Ochako Uraraka with 289, Shinso Hitoshi with 157, and Momo Yaoyorozu with Shinso was amazed by the number of pro-heroes interested in training him, while Momo was equally surprised by the attention she received. She reflected on how pro-heroes were trained to recognize talent. As the class engaged in discussion, Kaminari prepared to ask a question. He noticed Midoriya's unusual attire, which drew the attention of the entire class. Midoriya, dressed in blue shorts, a gray Hawaiian t-shirt, and sunglasses, explained that he would be away for the next week on important hero business in America. Luggage appeared in his hands, and confusion spread among the students. Kirishima exclaimed in disbelief, questioning who would teach them in Midoriya's absence. Midoriya reassured them that midnight would cover for him and wished them luck with their internships before vanishing from sight. Jiro expressed her disdain for Midoriya's eccentricity. Instantly, Midoriya reappeared, not in Mizudafu but in the warm streets of California. He remarked on the intense heat and the unique atmosphere of the United States, noting that this trip felt different from his previous visits for training and hero work. After settling into his hotel room and changing into appropriate attire, he made his way to a prominent hero agency building. Upon entering the building, he approached a woman at the front desk. She recognized him immediately and, with a slight stutter, informed him that bait was on the next floor to the left. Midoriya thanked her and headed upstairs. As he stood before a plain brown door, he opened it to find a familiar face inside. It was someone he considered a friend, someone who had supported him during difficult times, and someone whose abilities were on par with his own. The woman turned around, her tall stature and long blonde hair making her stand out. Her smile widened as she recognized him. She greeted him warmly, calling him her little brother. It was none other than Stars and Stripes, the #1 hero of America. Chapter name, profile, chapter begins name, Izuku Midoriya hero name, Deku nicknames, the Green Flash, trouble student 1 given to him by Aizawa in his second year, Midoriya-Sensei, teaches called by Kirishima age, 22 to 23 years old height, 6 feet 1 inch occupation, number 3 Pro-Hero quirk, unknown to the public, secretly one for all and all the other users' quirks. Personality, Midoriya is a caring individual who values his students and is always willing to help them overcome their physical or emotional challenges. He has a comedic side and enjoys entertaining others. If one were to ask his students or co-workers about him, they would often describe him as childish and immature. However, in the face of combat, his demeanor shifts. He becomes a confident fighter who enjoys playfully engaging with villains, showcasing his overwhelming power. Beneath this playful exterior lies a sincere and kind hero who is always there for others. Hero costume. His scarf sometimes covers his mouth when wrapped around him, but during combat, it flows freely in the wind.